Okay, we are live.
Okay. Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to the January 6th, 2026 Planning Board meeting. Um, this meeting is fully remote, but if you would like to join the meeting, you can go to the town website. On the front page is a calendar, and under Planning Board, there's a link to join if you want to join the meeting. But we are fully remote tonight, and first on our agenda is discussion of potential zoning bylaw and municipal code amendments for annual town meeting. I'm going to start off from the beginning. Lori had sent out some emails on the 24th. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to share the screen. The first three we can go through quickly because we already agreed it. Number one was the birth. We already talked about that, voted on that. We're all set. The second one, off-street parking and loading, we also had agreed on that we were okay. The third one had to do with valet parking. I think, Lori, did you add the required ADA compliant parking within 100 feet of I mean, that's okay. I mean, I think that's important. Maybe it was there last time. I didn't notice.
I think that was something that was discussed at the last meeting.
Okay. So what does this mean? This means that valet parking is allowed, but there has to be at least a handicap spot or two near the building. Is that what that means?
Correct. So the the ADA compliant parking space must be within 100 feet of the use.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the parking can be valet parking.
Okay. And last time we had talked about the residential district. So then I had all my sheets printed out and I just checked with one of the original valet ones we had. So this one, the red I added, I don't know if we need it. It was just discussed before and I'm not sure if we need it or not. The design of the valet parking will not cause queuing in a vehicular travel lane. I think Medway had that. Do you think we need it? Don't need it? I mean, if someone was looking at valet parking, I think it would be important to know,
I
but maybe
agree.
it would come up in the application. Or maybe that's something that would be handled. If it became a problem and people were queuing into the road,
Well, I don't think people
then,
would be queuing into the road only because they're getting out of their car,
yeah,
right? And so, I don't think there's a business out there that wants their potential customers getting out into the road and potentially not making it into their building.
right.
But did you mean like queuing, like waiting for valet parking? Because I have seen that happen where people are in their cars waiting for the valet and they are,
This was just something that Medway had, so I wanted to just bring it up. But I would assume it caused queuing into the road. Like, so maybe the valet parking area can be inside the parking lot more, so then the cars aren't queuing out onto the main road that they're pulling out of.
I
I don't,
also wonder if maybe the intent was so that the people aren't, so the valet parking itself isn't on a road. But I'm
right, so
not
it's like,
sure if that was the intent. Maybe we should clarify this.
yeah.
right. Yeah, I didn't know if we wanted to add it or not. I just wanted you and Bob to look at it and see if it's something that was necessary or if it's something that would come up during the site plan review anyways.
Who would be in charge of looking at the design of valet parking?
That would be
And
you folks because of the zoning board of appeals, because this would be a special permit.
the flow, yeah.
Yeah. I just didn't know if if you have it on there, then it would trigger whoever's in charge to look at it and say, oh yeah, that's a good spot. That's not a good spot. If they have it there, then people are going to be parking in the road. But maybe they'd think of it anyways.
Hmm.
So it's up to the board. I don't know. Or Lori, what you think, if you think it's needed or if it's not needed.
Well, I suppose they'll be explaining how the valet parking is going to work as part of their submission. And if there's concern, that could be placed as a condition of approval.
Mm-hmm. I just didn't know if Medway put it there, so like it would be something, maybe they missed it in one and had a problem. But,
Well, if it was added, I think we'd all have to agree as to what it meant, because I think right now we don't know what it means.
Right.
okay, so I can leave it off, but when it comes in front of us, we have to take it under consideration. So we had talked about those three before. We talked about the birth before. So the next section, Lori, you had added the assembly hall.
Yeah, and
And
I
you,
noticed when I was printing it out today, that the HBSW is incorrectly underlined and assembly hall is not underlined and should be. So those, I'd make those two changes. Take the
Okay.
underline away from HBSW and add underline to assembly hall.
Okay.
Is there a reason why it's under institutional uses, or that's the best place for it?
Yeah, I kind of grappled with where to put it. And I put it under institutional uses because that's where cultural use was. And it seemed like this was most similar to the cultural use.
Mm.
And it really doesn't matter, does it? If it's under internet institutional use or business use, does it matter where it is? Not really.
I don't think so.
Because I know when we first talked about it, it was for White Cliffs, and that was a business use. So I didn't know. I mean, I guess they don't have to be together. So, I mean, you could ask Bob if it matters to him, but I don't think it would.
And I am, one thing that I was kind of grappling with is, of course, we haven't had the town meeting yet for White Cliffs. And
Mhm.
that public hearing that we held is only good for 6 months. So we need to advertise the public hearing for the articles that are going to go forward at the Springtown meeting. So I wonder if we should add that
Mm.
just as a precaution if the White Cliffs isn't handled until the annual town meeting.
Yeah. Well, I thought this would be part of it because it's listed under this zoning bylaw.
Yeah, and then we could eliminate assembly use definition from the hospitality overlay because it won't be needed if we're gonna add it to other districts as well.
Hmm. I was just curious, did we decide, I went to look back at the minutes. And I know there was a lot of back and forth with the ZBA by right, special permit, by right, special permit. And I couldn't figure out where we left it. By right or by special permit. I thought some of the people were saying special permit because there could be drinking, it could go late. Does anybody on the
In my
board?
notes, I thought it was agreed that it would be by right, but possibly I'm mistaken, or you folks can change your mind.
Does
I know.
anybody remember or have concerns? I know the ZBA, there were a couple concerns because they might back up, if it's in business east, it might back up to a neighborhood. Not that, I'm not talking about White Cliffs in general, but just a different assembly hall somewhere else. Instead of allowing it by right, if it was a special permit, there could be, more thought put into it.
I thought we had kind of wanted to leave it by right just to kind of avoid any controversy or legal question if we deny something and somebody, wanted to claim it was like a discrimination or a First Amendment issue.
I could see how that could be unless it was a church. Like if we were denying a religious church or, any other religious place of worship. But if it's
Or
assembly hall for parties,
So just for context, cultural use is by right in downtown business, business east, and business west. It's not allowed in business south. It's allowed by special permit in highway business and highway business southwest. The other similar use is nonprofit club or membership organization. And that's allowed by right in downtown business, business east, business west, business south, and by special permit in highway business and highway business southwest. And not allowed, neither of those uses are allowed in the industrial district.
those allow alcohol. Like this includes a banquet hall.
Right.
And do the cultural use and the other one that you mentioned, social club, do those allow alcohol? Because I know our restaurants that allow alcohol are special permit, where if there's no alcohol, it's by right.
I don't think they specify, but I will double check.
Because I
I
think
just
when,
don't want unintended consequences.
Cultural use does not specify whether alcohol is allowed or not. And
That's what the definition is.
neither does private nonprofit club or membership organization. So I would imagine that means that they could sell alcohol.
The cultural use is a museum,
So like the Knights of Columbus
art gallery.
or like a veterans organization. So they may or may not sell alcohol.
Is that the social club?
It
Private?
is. Yep.
To me, these all seem like very similar and overlapping things, so it would kind of make sense just to have them all be consistent with each other.
Yeah, I agree with Carter. I think consistency is good here.
Um, I am noticing cultural use in nonprofit club. Nonprofits allowed by right in business south, cultural use is not. And then cultural use is also allowed in a couple of the residential districts by a special permit.
This is not the right, because I wouldn't want to allow banquet halls. Assembly hall definition is where the cultural is more of a art gallery or a museum.
mhm.
It says it's a banquet hall, private club or fraternal. I wonder if we leave the private club or fraternal to the social club. Why in the banquet hall is the assembly hall? Let's see. Because you don't want two definitions for one thing, because then they should, like you said, be the same, or they picked one or the other. Private, nonprofit.
Well, I guess something that to me stands out is like cultural use includes like facility or hall for live performing arts productions. Um, and so then it to me it seems like you almost have like, okay, if it's a live band, it's a cultural use. If you have a DJ, it's an assembly hall. Like to me, it just seems very overlapping and too similar to each other that I don't think we should have. I think we should kind of just keep it consistent so you don't run into that kind of like trouble where you're unsure if you can allow like, well, this thing versus this thing, that they're so similar to each other that um, it just seems like we want them to be consistent.
Well, I mean, I do think, I see your point on that, Carter, but I do think it is a bit different as far as the entertainment, because you know, for instance, if I'm a restaurant, and I wanted to have live entertainment, I need to get a special permit for that. I need to
Mhm.
get a special use for that, whereas I can have the music as loud as I want.
Mhm.
Yeah, like an example to me of a cultural use would be like the Wang Center. So that would be a cultural use, not an assembly hall. Like a museum would be a cultural use, not an assembly hall.
Mhm.
Whereas a VFW would be an assembly hall.
Mhm.
So private nonprofit club and membership organization is very similar to the assembly hall. Because they probably fall under that. But I guess they have members.
Right.
That's the difference, I guess. And this is an assembly hall for non-members. All of us who aren't included. I mean, I guess it's
Well,
fine. The
maybe,
only
maybe,
are
maybe
there any
because a private club is its own separate definition, eliminate private club from the assembly hall definition.
Mhm. And with fraternal organization come out too, because that's memberships.
Yeah.
Like, because then that overlaps them. And I guess if you back up to Business East or Business West, this is one of the uses. Because a hotel motel conference center is by special permit, but the assembly hall is by right. How would an assembly hall differ from a conference center if it's a banquet hall? I just want to try to figure out some of these that do overlap so we don't say, well, I want to do this, but conference hall is by special permit, so I'm going to call myself an assembly hall.
Well, the assembly hall, like a use, what we were talking about specifically with White Cliffs, is the location where, like a non-religious ceremonial space for
Mhm.
people to get married. So,
I just want to look up conference center to see, could you be a conference center in a place that's not allowed in them, having them say, well, you know what, I'm just going to be in an assembly hall. We're not conference center, because
Mhm.
an assembly hall is where civic educational purposes. Isn't that similar to a conference center?
I'm looking at the conference center. It's a facility for formal consultation, discussion, and/or education of business employees or associates, and may provide for attendees and staff adequate housing, eating, and recreational facilities contained within the same building. Um, but that sounds like I don't, I feel like an assembly hall would be part of, but not, there'd be a lot more with a conference center.
Mhm. When they add in the housing. Okay. So right now we crossed out private club and fraternal because that's something else. Assembly hall, we're including by right because that's what is the same as a cultural center. I just want to get it straight. Except for in highway business, the cultural center is by special permits.
Mm-hmm.
So do we make it match? If we really are going to make it match, do we make it match? I mean, I don't see why a cultural center needs to be special permit in the highway business, but maybe it's because it's something they didn't want to go there because they wanted like restaurants and hotels. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I don't see why it would need to be.
Hmm. And the nonprofit club too. You need a special permit in highway business for both of those. So do we make assembly hall match if we're gonna make everything match? Or do we allow this assembly hall by right in highway business and the other two are still by special permit? Anyone have a preference?
I guess my thought would be it could be by special permit, just to, again, to see, depending on, yeah. to
The only
make it
reason why I
match.
would include it special permit is because if we're gonna match the other two similar items, they both call for special permit in highway business.
And I think to some degree, the definition of assembly hall could be misconstrued.
Oh, with political and
Hmm.
what do you think, Lori? If we're gonna make it match, do we have it special permit in highway business? I don't know if it's
Sure, I can make that change.
it seems silly, but
Personally, Assembly Hall doesn't seem like it would be usually special permit uses are those that are kind of, could be damaging, impactful to
Hmm.
abutting uses. And I don't think
Yeah.
it would be negatively impacting industrial uses or, highway
highway,
business type uses.
right. I don't know
So,
why
But
cultural was
well,
a
yeah,
special permit.
maybe those need to be changed.
Hmm. You know, maybe they didn't want originally a cultural religious use on highway business because highway business probably gets the most revenue. And if you're a place of worship or something like that, you're paying no taxes.
And it could be
So
that they're
well,
maybe
trying,
they wanted to hold the highway business use for those bringing in the most revenue.
uh, religious uses can go anywhere they want. So they're
Mhm.
Dover Amendment protected
already.
uses. So, um, if it's some sort of religion, they could go anywhere.
Okay. I was just trying to
Same thing
figure
with
out
the
why they didn't
educational.
allow them.
If you go back to that, there's the same thing with the educational.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case with the religious, then why don't we take the religious out of the definition,
And even educational is one.
right? Because those can go anywhere anyways. So why
Mhm.
lock us down and have a potential of litigation in the future?
Well,
Maybe
if
it's
you
there
think
just to give
about,
people ideas.
Well,
if you think about like conference spaces,
yeah.
They are used for educational purposes, but
they're
they
not.
may not necessarily. I mean, it could be used for a religious purpose, or it could be used for any of these items. So,
Yeah,
we're talking about the construction of the space itself.
yeah,
So, this definition pretty much is saying that the space can be used for a whole variety of purposes, including educational and religious purposes. So that's different than saying, I'm building a church.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
if you're building a church, that's a Dover Amendment use, clearly. If you're building a school, clearly an educational use. But if you're building an assembly space that can be used for educational purposes, then it is not protected under the Dover Amendment.
Right, but wouldn't those come under social at that point?
Not necessarily. Like, for example, you could have, um, a museum that regularly hosts educational programs, including, maybe they have field trips.
Mm.
That kids are going to learn about, I don't know, an indigenous culture. So the use itself is possibly assembly hall, but it may also host educational programs.
Well, but you said museum. Museum is already covered under something else, right? Didn't we
Right,
just
it's
say that?
but it's not, if you're asking Bill whether or not it's a tax exempt Dover exemption, I think the primary use has to be something like educational, or the primary use has to be religious.
No, no, what I'm saying is that for educational and religious, wouldn't those be covered under social?
Not necessarily.
Okay. But again, then, if it's a religious is covered under Dover,
If
right?
it's a primary
So,
use.
right.
Yeah,
So
but
why
the
have it
use,
here is my point.
yes,
Why?
but the assembly use may be used for religious purposes, but it may not be used for religious
Right, which would be
purposes.
under social,
I don't
which is
consider
a more
religious and
general
social as the
description.
same thing.
Yeah.
I
Because
suppose like this would be like if somebody was building a hall and then renting it to a church to use it, that would not necessarily be
Like, for
like, oh,
example,
but to me,
the
that's still community, it's still
historical
social.
society building is used by a whole host of groups. So
Mhm.
it's used, for example, by Alcoholics Anonymous. It's used by, it may be used by the Boy Scouts. It may be used by a Bible group. It may be used for, book club. So
Yep.
What it's used for is unimportant as far as what groups are going in there.
Mhm.
The purpose of the use is to assemble. It's an assembly use.
Right. But yeah, but all of those assemblies that you just mentioned are social,
I
right? They're
don't
people
agree.
coming together in a social environment, in a group, assembling together.
I don't agree.
Okay.
I almost, the way I look at it, when I see banquet hall, I almost think it should be by special permit in Business East. There are a lot of homes there that back up to this, and I think like a restaurant with alcohol is a special permit. I think banquet hall should be by special permit in Business East. I mean, downtown business is a downtown, and Business West has bigger, um, bigger parcels, and the neighborhoods are further away. But I think Business East was, when you read the community development plan, they have smaller parcels there and it's situated more near neighborhoods.
Mm.
So I actually think the assembly hall should be special permit in business east. And allow it in, I don't care about highway business.
Right. I would agree with that, Amy.
I I guess I still feel like it makes the most sense just to keep it consistent with the cultural use. Even if you change it, but I just think they're so similar, I wouldn't want to um, have them have two different things. I also think, I mean, if I don't see how an assembly hall would be kind of a worse use than any other business that's allowed in a business district. I mean,
Well, I
it's
think
yeah,
a
it's just a
cultural
place
use
where
is like a museum or a gallery, and a lot of those close by 5, 6 o'clock. A banquet hall that you're building as a banquet hall just for weddings is open till like midnight, and you've got cars and you've got music. And so I think a special permit would catch any of that.
Yeah.
That I'm not trying to think of White Cliffs. I'm thinking of other places all up and down that street.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, any one of those banks that abuts the houses could turn into an assembly hall, and now we've got a party place. And I think something like that would fall under a special permit.
Agreed.
Do we want to take a vote? Actually, I saw somebody raise their hand, but I'm sharing my screen, so I don't think I can. I saw it said someone in the audience raised their hand.
Yeah, I think Susie did.
Can anyone allow her to speak? I don't know if I
Hi,
can.
can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you just state your name? Oh,
8
thanks.
Emerson Road. I know it's January 6th, but Happy New Year, everyone. My question was, that was actually going to be part of my question, because I remember doing the tour of White Cliffs, and I love the new plan for White Cliffs, but part of the selling point to a lot of residents was that we would be able to kind of control with a special permit the hours that it was open. And proms, graduation parties, this would really kind of like open that up. So if there was an assembly hall, I'm thinking like all the places people are constantly posting in online forums asking, do you know some place where I could have a gathering, a party, to get people out of their homes, so to speak. So I think if we did it by special permit in some of these places that do abut homes and residents, I think it would really work out well. I just wanted to bring up that point because all I kept thinking of was White Cliffs, and that was part of the selling point for the residents and the people that lived in the neighborhood behind them. But that was my only comment on this, was just thinking of that and asking I had put my hand down at first to listen to this discussion, but to ask if it could be used for the places that abut the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody on the board have any other comments? Should we take a vote on it?
Sure. I guess I am also just noticing, I mean, restaurants are a by right use in Business East as well, and there are restaurants in the Business East district that are open until late in the night already. Yeah, I mean, I guess to me, I see it, it's, every, I think all of the business districts, there are residential abutting or within it, but it's still a business district.
Residents, including alcoholic, is special permit. Without
Sure.
alcohol is by right. So if you're having a banquet hall for parties, they usually have alcohol.
Depends on the kind of party or.
I know, but we
Right,
have
you
to
wanna be
cover all
prepared.
of them. So, and that Business East is closer to the homes. All right. I think we should take a straw poll though. How many people, I guess we can do a raise of hand, think that, I'll start with Business East because it had the most discussion. How many people think, oh, I think I have to do a roll call vote because we're remote. Roll call vote. How many people think that the Assembly Hall should be by special permit in Business East? Yep, Millie?
Oh, I thought you wanted me to
Yeah.
raise my hand.
Okay, I know, I said raise our hand, but I think I have to do roll call because we're all remote. So I'll call on you first. You, yes or no?
I do believe it should be.
Yep. Okay, Bill Pierce
Yep.
and Carter,
No.
Anthony,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So I think, so special permits on Business East. What do you guys think about downtown business? Should that just be by right, or does anybody think it should be special permit for Assembly Hall downtown?
Would it be ZBA or planning board?
Well, BBA, which is ZBA, because that's what all of the other ones are for business district.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, does anybody think it should be by special permit in the downtown business district?
No.
I think I'm okay with it downtown because it's a downtown, but there are still houses, but
I think I'm okay with it with by right as well.
Yep.
Carter and Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
by
fine.
right.
Okay, so we all think by right. I'm not even gonna take a vote. We'll leave that by right. How about Business West? Does anyone have any heartache with it by right in Business West?
No.
I don't think so, because I think the houses are further back.
Yep.
Okay, so does anybody, Millie and Carter, what do you think?
For Business West,
Business West, by
I
right,
think-
special permit?
it should be by right, I think.
Yep.
Okay, and Anthony?
By right.
Okay. All right, and I don't even think we have to ask about highway business and highway business southwest because those are highways, so. And do we want to allow an assembly hall in the industrial? I guess,
I don't see why not.
That's fine with me.
okay.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
I may just ask, I mean, I notice, cultural use is not allowed in Business South or industrial, and nonprofit club is not allowed in industrial. Would we consider changing that to keep them consistent there, or do we think there's a reason not to allow those in industrial or Business South?
I know Business South is up by me, it's up by there, I think some Business South is up over by Walmart. And there's a big, well, I guess it's a religious group, so they can go anywhere. But they have a big congregation in Business South. And it's really not near any homes. So I don't know, but it, like Carter says, to keep it consistent, or should we just allow it in Business South? Anyone else?
Mm.
Personally, I say allow them.
I'm okay with it because there are a couple already over there.
I agree with that.
Industrial use, like, it's like, okay, because, it could be bad, it could be worse things. But what do
So-
you guys think? Anybody else? Or do you keep industrial for bigger purposes?
No, because I think, having the larger lot sometimes will allow for things like parking, and keeping it away from residential areas.
Mhm. And Barefoot Road is also industrial, and there's some spaces there that were
Yep.
made into like contractor yards, which actually have low tax revenue. So something like a banquet hall would probably bring in more revenue. And it's down by the senior center, which is kind of like a banquet hall gathering place.
I also think like for cultural uses in industrial, like the American Heritage Museum in Hudson, that's like surrounded by, and I don't know what zoning is for that, but it's surrounded by industrial things and seems to
Oh,
do
I see.
well with where it
Yeah.
is.
So at some point, I don't know if we want to like this town meeting, but I mean, we could add cultural use and
Yeah.
and change to add those in business south and industrial. I mean, it doesn't matter to me.
I could just add it to this single article.
How about that? Do you guys want to add the cultural use into industrial and business south while we're at it?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm okay with it.
Have a nice museum in one of the warehouses. You never know.
Yeah, some of them are kind of neat to look around.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so I think we're done with Assembly
Or-
Hall.
Actually, I'd also so both the cultural use and nonprofit club or membership are allowed. Well, they're all cultural use is allowed by right in downtown neighborhood, and general residential and Main Street residential by a special permit. Um, and then nonprofit club are allowed anywhere by a special permit. I think at least the ones close to downtown, I think should be allowed by a special permit, simply because similar uses currently exist there. I'm thinking like the Historical Society would be Main Street residential. There's the old Grange Hall, which I'm not sure if that's been renovated into apartments or if the hall part of it still exists. If someone were to reopen it, that would be in, I think, general residential. Or the Unitarian Church has their hall that seems like an assembly hall, that would be in general residential as well.
I definitely don't want to open up Assembly Hall to general residential because that's banquet halls and that's a
But I mean,
neighborhood.
but it would include like a smaller like hall. I mean,
That's
would
what
the
a
permit
cultural center
process,
would be for.
but like these are so kind of similar to each other that like I'm just thinking of like, yeah, any organizational hall is that. And if you want um things happening downtown, you need to kind of let things be downtown, I guess.
Not in general residential, though. There are a lot of residents over there. And they wouldn't want a banquet hall next door. Main Street residential only has like 5 or 6 buildings or maybe 10. But I do think you know, what's it called? The historical society that's already under cultural center. So I don't think we have to move Assembly Hall further into anything residential.
I disagree.
What does everybody else feel? Just leave it, or do you want to?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to move the potential of a banquet hall next door to me. I wouldn't want to move that into any residential area.
No.
You're going to have music, you're going to have, lots of cars in and out. What does that add to the traffic in the neighborhood?
At all hours.
Yep.
Right.
I agree with
Okay.
that.
Okay. So we'll move forward.
Everyone's anti-fun, apparently.
Just
The
fun in the
next,
right places.
The next bylaw is fences. Lori, could you explain it? This is new.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, so what I wanted to do, of course, as I explained to you previously, the desire to put together a fence bylaw came out of a variance application before the ZBA. And what became clear to everybody is that there really needed to be some clear guidance on fences. So the big issues that were discussed as part of that application is how to measure the height of a fence, as well as the location of a fence. This has kind of come up time and time again as to the location of the fence relative to the property line. Can a fence be directly on a property line? Should it be a foot off of the property line? And then the height of a fence as it pertains to the front yard setback. So there was concern about sight distance coming out of a driveway. And so the intent of this bylaw was just to clarify all of these issues. So I kind of went back and forth with Bob Federico about whether it would make the most sense to put this as a general bylaw or a zoning bylaw. And ultimately, we thought that the zoning bylaw would make the most sense because generally, of course, we do have a lot of fences all over town. And we wanted to make clear that this bylaw would apply to new fences. So folks who already have a fence in place would be essentially grandfathered as far as their existing fence is concerned. But when they go to install a new fence, they would have to comply. So of course, the zoning bylaw has the inherent grandfathering, whereas the municipal code general bylaw does not. So Bob did review this. He did provide me with some feedback, and I did make changes based on the feedback he supplied me with.
So I have a question on this, Lori, because in the first section, you talk about, in the first paragraph, you talk about fences shall be of a safe, non-hazardous construction. But then you go on to say no fence, freestanding wall, or hedge. And you specify that in the next paragraph.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you mean fences, freestanding walls, or hedges in the first bit.
Yeah, I can change that and make it so that it applies to all three. That's a good point.
Yeah, because it almost looks like fences are specifically separated in that first bit.
Yeah.
I almost wonder though, I highlighted hedge because I know like the houses that abut the high school block out the high school driveway. And there were some really pretty hedges back there. And I would hate to say they can only go 7 feet at high if it's their own plants and they're trying to, block out either like, I don't know if they can see the football stadium or the driveway, like.
Or the
I
lights.
didn't know if we should tell people how big their hedges should be.
Maybe I can clarify the language. So the height of a hedge, in my opinion, the only time that it should be really limited in height is in that front yard area where it could impede sight distance. So if you
Oh,
want to
okay.
have a 40-foot high hedge in your backyard, go to it. It's really in the front that it's a problem.
I know like at the end of my street, Indian Meadow, there used to be some hedges and the DPW would have to go down there because it was on someone's property, but it would block the line of sight. So like there would be people in my neighborhood all the time saying, "Oh my God, you take your life in your hands pulling out onto the road because you can't see." And Scott, as part of the DPW, could go down there and I don't know. So I don't know if there's something already in the bylaw somewhere that you can't block line of sight. Because he seemed to be able to go down there and tell them they had to take their hedges down.
So what I could do is just eliminate in the second paragraph. So it would just say no fence or freestanding wall. So I can delete hedge. And then in the third paragraph, it says fences, hedges, and freestanding walls shall be no taller than 3.5 feet between the street and the front yard setback line or the building setback line front of the foundation, whichever is smaller.
When you say hedges, are you including something like the boundary trees and arborvitae that also block views when they're fully
Yes.
matured? Okay.
Yep. So a hedge is a collection of shrubs that is planted in a line to create like a barrier.
I was just wondering if there's already something in a general bylaw that says that nothing can
Block.
block the line of sight. I don't know. Did you ever? I was wondering if you could ask Scott, because you hate to duplicate it if it's there.
I did not see anything like that.
Okay.
Okay.
There is
Now
a
is it-
section on fences around swimming pools in the general bylaw, but I didn't see anything about hedges.
Or blocking line of sight with anything.
And any type of vegetation, right? Because you could have a trellis with vines or something that is, oh, I guess that would be under freestanding wall anyways. And yeah.
I was just wondering about the measurement. Like, I didn't think it should include the decorative caps on posts. Like, usually the fence, we're measuring 7 feet, but it seems like it should be the horizontal boards that go across and not really the decorative caps. Because then your fence, I don't know.
Well, that would mean that because the decorative caps can be quite high.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so if you wanted to have, a taller decorative cap, then you would just have to have a shorter fence. So, the standard fence height is 6 feet. So if you want to have a 6-foot fence, meaning the horizontal section is 6 feet tall, then you can go an extra foot higher with your decorative cap.
We allow that though on roofs, like, the spires and the roof gets measured to a certain line, and then anything decorative doesn't count towards the height.
Well, I think that's also what the building code says.
Mhm.
So if you have the decorative caps taller, then you need a building permit.
I
Because
just saw
that would be a fence that's taller than 7 feet.
Mm.
but is a cap really a fence? It's just a post top, right? I don't know. I picture the fence as being the board that goes across.
I
Well,
feel
Yeah,
seven,
that's
part of it.
why, we're defining it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I feel like 7 feet is so tall to begin with, that
Right.
flipping the cap would be, I mean,
And I think 7 feet seems to be a reasonable height if you're going far over. I've definitely seen trouble, especially on an unbuilt or unstable fence, the higher they got.
Isn't 7's the building code, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
I highlighted the 707-050 at the top, because should that say 709-050?
That's the language. I'm sorry, where are you?
I'm
709?
at the top where it says article to see if the town will vote to amend part 7 by adding a new section. It should be 707-050? 709, because the top part you wrote 709. It's just a typo.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I didn't know if they're both supposed to be 709 or both supposed to be 707.
709.
So I'll just change
We
that to a
already
9.
have a 707-050.
Okay, so we'll just change that to a 9.
Yep.
I saw there was a hand up. I don't know, if anybody can, because I'm sharing screen, I can't. And it was Jacob Jones.
Oh, and I did also change one word in the third paragraph. Instead of saying in the first sentence, the front of foundation, so in the parentheses, front of foundation, whichever is smaller, I'd like to change smaller to closer. I think that that's a better adjective for
Okay.
my intent.
Right here. Whichever is closer.
Yep.
Okay. Do any board members have any comments on anything with this bylaw?
You do have Jacob's hand raised.
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hi, Jacob Jones, 106 Green Street, here as your liaison. I just did want to, earlier you had asked about other bylaws. It's not 100% on all fours, but maybe you might look at, it's under the street openings, under streets and sidewalks. It's 4-04-120. I can read it, it's very short. The whole section's in the context of road openings, but this section here, exceptions, it's saying you don't have to have a permit, surety, or bond in the following instances. And paragraph B says, for the planting of shade trees, shrubs, and the like in any grass plot adjoining the paved or used portion of any street or highway, provided that they are properly set back from the used or paved portion thereof so as to not obstruct a corner view or endanger the use of such highway. It's not exactly what you were just talking about, but it sounds pretty close. Just throwing that out there as you might look at that and see if that plays into solving the problem that you were addressing earlier.
Oh, okay.
The line of sight.
The line of sight, right?
Yeah.
The question of, do we already have a law that prevents you from planting shrubbery that makes you not be able to see around a corner? I don't know if this is that, but it's at least close. Then my last comment would be, just as you're thinking about how to measure, it would be interesting to me to know how many fence caps we have in town already that exceed 7 feet. In other words, how many fence caps are you going to say now are non-conforming, pre-existing by doing this?
That's going to be impossible for us to find out
Well, I
because fences
understand.
don't require permits. So
Well-
they only become a problem if generally a neighbor complains about a fence.
Well, what
And
I'm
then the
saying is
building
that
inspector goes out and inspects it.
what I'm saying is, if this bylaw as written and the decorative caps were included, how many hundreds of fences that currently exist would have had to have a permit if they were installed after the implementation of this bylaw? Because with the cap
Existing
included,
fences
they'd
are
be over 7 feet.
grandfathered.
That's what I'm asking.
Existing fences are grandfathered. It'd only be new fences that would
So-
have to comply.
So, Madam Chair, what I'm asking is, has the board done any analysis to see what percentage of fences in town today, if they were built today, as built, would need a permit before you consider measuring to include the cap? That's all that I'm asking.
Right.
Thanks.
Because we don't want to make it too difficult for people, you know? Now this is section 709-050 fences. Is this going to be something that we just include under site plan, like when we do our review, or they don't have to go for a permit, do they?
No, so this would just be for the building inspector to enforce. So when people want to install fences, they generally go to the building inspector to ask what the fence regulations are. So he will now have a bylaw that he can refer people to. Because right now, of course, he just says, well, you know, my recommendation is you get a survey to make sure that you install the fence on your own property. You know, generally it's recommended that you build the fence 1 foot off your property line. So we don't have any regulations as is. So he's just giving them advice, but now he'll be able to point to a bylaw.
And what if like a neighbor, if they wanted to share a fence, you know, in between properties, could they get that with a waiver? Because sometimes there are neighbors who share the fence line. So that would be right on the line. It wouldn't, that would be like having two fences set back a foot from each other.
Yeah, I mean, they could certainly ask for a variance in that case.
Can we make a note that there can be a waiver, or are they gonna have to go for a variance? Because I don't know, would you get a variance? Because it's just allowing something between neighbors, you know, it's not really because of topology or soil. Just, you know, fences are definitely important to some people, and I just don't want to make it difficult. Oh my gosh, the planning board is now making you get a permit for a fence.
Well, we're not requiring them to get a permit.
Mm-mm.
Right.
This is just a regulation that
Yeah.
clarifies what the requirements are for fences.
Yeah,
But right now they can be on the line. So any fence that's on the property line would now be a non-conforming structure.
Correct. The challenge that I would say is, okay, so you have 2 neighbors that agree to put up a fence.
Mhm.
And then one of those neighbors sells and
Yeah.
moves somewhere else. So the new neighbor says, when it's time to replace the fence, I don't want a fence. And then the old neighbor will be trespassing on their property to repair the fence. So there's that issue.
Should we say in the case of a shared fence between neighbors that can be on the property line?
I don't, I
'Cause
think
it
that's
does
so
happen,
specific. I feel like that's a very specific situation, and I'd hate to, you know, try to hone in on a bylaw or regulation for something very specific and probably not that common.
The house I lived in, they shared a fence. Once we moved out, it was on Church Street, and the two neighbors shared a fence
Yeah.
as soon as we showed up left. So it was like I just saw that happen, and I wouldn't want to say, well, now they both would do a fence 1 foot apart.
What I could say is instead of having the shall, I could change that to should. For maintenance reasons, no fence should be installed closer than 1 foot from a property line. Is
Yeah,
that
because
good?
the state building code that you can install it right on the property line, so
You
I don't
can.
know if our bylaw could even say has to be a foot back unless, well, I guess you could. But it's up to the whole board, you know.
So I'll also add to the first sentence, fences and freestanding walls
Mhm.
shall be of a safe, non-hazardous construction.
Yeah.
So I'll add, wherever I say fences, I'll add freestanding walls.
Yeah.
So the hedge can be on the property line. Chances are it's going to grow over into the neighbor's property line anyway. I mean, you can't really control easily that.
Now, does this define how they measure it? I'm just thinking like, say you're on an uneven property and
Yes,
the slope goes up. Are they measuring from the bottom of the fence to the top? They're not, because some
yes,
fences might be higher than others.
correct. That was the problem in that instance that I went to the ZBA.
Mm.
So if you have an undulating topography, then your fence should be 6 feet tall. So then that will enable it to be slightly taller, where the topography requires it to be taller. So you should be conservative with the height of your fence. Otherwise, if you have a 7-foot fence, then you have to pound that fence into the ground, regardless of, what happens with if you have any ledge or whatever, there's no forgiveness. You have to get that fence into the ground, or you have to go to the ZBA for a height variance.
I'll just show you a picture of my neighbors that just put in a fence and see if it would pass. Like their backyard, like my backyard is pretty level and then it goes up a slope. So I would say it would be 7 feet probably in the backyard, but probably like 20 feet up on the slope. I don't know.
So I was just looking up the actual Massachusetts regulation on how they
Mhm.
measure a fence. So it's from natural or finished ground level at the base of the fence, whichever is higher, up to the highest point of the fence.
Mm-hmm.
So even on that slope, it's going to be from the ground to the
Yeah.
top of the fence on the slope.
Mm-hmm. So it will stay 7 feet.
So it'll stay
Yeah.
7 feet. Now it might seem like it's 20 feet when you're, sitting down at the bottom of the slope, but
Yeah.
as long as it's 7 feet from the ground, that's the measurement. And it does
Okay,
mention, and it does actually say cap in the regulation.
Okay. I
So
just
it
want
says top.
ours to follow that.
Yep. Yeah,
And
and
not
I think he put it here as well, right? On that second paragraph, the last line. 780 CMR. That's what I'm looking at
Mhm.
now. So it says, highest point of the fence, and then parentheses, top of rails, pickets, cap, etc.
Okay. As long as that's what I would say. I just don't want to, it looks pretty, like a big definition. I don't want it to get more confusing.
Yeah.
Do you think you should run this by the ZBA since this was one of their applications? Just
I
for
did
input?
email it to the ZBA.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have any questions? So as
No.
far as this page of draft warrant articles, I would assume that this is finished until we have our public hearing. We don't have to come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And you shared this with Bob, Lori, the fencing?
I did.
Okay, so I mean, if the ZBA comes back with comments, then we can talk about it again. But if they don't, we can wait for the public hearing process.
Mm-hmm.
I'd
Okay,
like to advertise the public hearing for our first meeting in February. If that works for you folks. I don't
well, I
want
was
to
thinking
cut it too
the first
close.
or the second, depending on how the OSRD and the other ones go.
Okay.
Okay, so next on the agenda, we have a couple other bylaws. I know, Bill, you had sent out the data center one. But I actually didn't review it because I was reviewing the other ones today. But if you want, you or Carter could describe it, and then we could talk about it more at the next meeting if people have comments.
Yeah, I mean, we can just wait till the next meeting. I think that's fine. Give everyone a chance to review it.
Okay.
And come up with any questions.
Okay. I was thinking of doing that same one with the storage containers. We had talked about storage containers a couple months ago, and I never got any feedback from Bob. So I was going to look into it. I'm not necessarily against the storage containers. Maybe they can be screened from view. But I just wanted to look into it a little further, and I can bring it up at the next meeting also with the data centers. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So the next one we have, I think what will be easier to go first is the donation bins, because that was almost done. I'm gonna share it. I had a couple comments. That's what I was reviewing today, Lori. Let's see. This is it. Mhm. So I think I tried to pull up because Lori had sent out a bunch of bylaws the 24th. I don't know if anybody had reviewed the donation collection bin. I know we talked about it a lot. I had some small changes. One thing I wanted to discuss with the board is maybe not allowing them in downtown business. The reason for that is because for donation bins, what Lori has as part of this, which I agree with, is the bins shall not be permitted within minimum yard setbacks, landscape buffers, parking. But in downtown business, there really aren't any setbacks. So if somebody puts up a donation bin, it could be right on their neighbor's property line. And really, there are only two in the downtown right now that I could find, so I didn't think this would have a huge effect. The Blake Street has some donation bins. It's in the municipal parking lot. We don't know who owns them anyways, or if anyone has permission. And then there was a gas station that had a donation bin, and I'm not sure if they would be upset if their donation bin went away. But when the first idea of the donation bins came about, it was like part of downtown beautification because it's like a trash can, like a trash dumpster right on the road. So, that was one thing I wanted to see what board members thought about donation bins. They're allowed in all districts, commercial, industrial, not residential. And I was considering not downtown business in the name of downtown revitalization. Plus, people go in and out to do their donations, so it might be better in a parking lot that has more room. And if we want the schools to get the most business, then people can go to the schools. So I wrote, donation bins are not allowed in residential districts unless on a school property or property with a religious exemption, because we had talked about that. And then for the building inspector, if they determine, it says if it determined, but I think it's talking about the buildings inspector, right? So if they determine the placement of the bin would constitute, it was just a grammar thing. For donation collection bins are not permitted on vacant lots. I added lots with vacant buildings too, because I picture a vacant lot as being an empty lot with nothing on it, but there are also lots that have buildings that are empty. So I added lots with vacant buildings or lots with buildings that don't have a valid town issued certificate of occupancy. I think that's what the Shrewsbury one said. It said,
There probably are a lot of buildings that don't have a certificate of occupancies because maybe they've been occupied for so many years.
if you don't have a certificate of occupancy, don't you have to close down?
No, like for example, well, I'm trying to think of a building, like a use that has been there for, decades. If they haven't done like a significant renovation or needed a building permit for anything, then they wouldn't necessarily have a certificate of occupancy.
So that'd be before 1955, before bylaws, is that what you're saying?
I just think that there are many buildings that don't have them, or they could have been issued like 30 years ago.
They're not still valid? I thought,
I don't know
guess
how
I
we
don't know a lot
police
about
that.
certificates.
We probably, the building department probably doesn't even have files that go back that far.
Hmm.
I guess Shrewsbury had it, so that's why I brought it back, but it was mostly to say that you shouldn't be putting donation collection bins on vacant lots or lots with buildings that aren't open, empty
I think
buildings.
that's a better way of saying it than tying it to occupancy permits.
Yeah,
So lots with vacant buildings. With lots, vacant lots or lots. With vacant buildings. I didn't know that you could be open without an occupancy permit. This just says address and contact number of the charity, the owner. And then I was gonna ask the board what they thought of how many bins per property. Like there was no more than 2 bins.
so
But
I've seen bins that are pretty huge that have like 3 or 4 different types of material donations. Is
mhm.
there anything you want to say about the size of them, or is it matter?
I believe I put it in there already. I think it's probably on maybe the first page.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Might be further down. We keep going. Mm,
3 cubic yards and 6 feet in height.
Yep, that's it.
I got it. Okay, there it is.
Is that what the normal bin is?
Yes.
So then I guess as a board or we have to decide, do you think it should be 2 bins per property, 1 bin per property? I know some of the schools have 2 bins, so I didn't want to take away from their fundraising. But do most other buildings have 1 or 2? I know there's a daycare, they have 1.
So you wanted to take away the exemption that I put for town and houses of worships?
Well, I put it up. I didn't want to exempt from the whole chapter because I thought if it's a church or a school, they still need to get a permit. Although I did write that there's no fee for it. But I wrote donation bins are not allowed in residential districts unless on a school property or property with a religious exemption. I didn't know how to word the religious part. But I feel like if it's a church, they shouldn't be exempt from following the whole standards and bylaws. I think they should still be allowed, but I don't think they should be exempt from the regulations. Like it still should be
I agree.
the same size, not a nuisance,
Yeah, I agree
you
with
know,
that.
within the setbacks.
I mean,
But
they're only exempt in their use. They're not exempt in everything else.
right. So that's why I crossed out exempt from this chapter and just made another number 2. That they're allowed, but they still have to follow the rules and regulations. Because right now, one of like Z School, there's bins around the sidewalk, right up on the road where now they'd have to conform and it would have to be, on the property, not in the setbacks.
Um, So in number 1, I don't understand why you added the words approved business districts. I mean,
Well, just because I put donation bins are not allowed in downtown business. So I didn't want it in all business districts if we were going to exclude it from downtown.
yeah, that's kind of confusing to me. Like,
So you
I
want me to
think
just
it's
take out,
better to just list the districts that it's allowed in. And then I think in number 2,
you know, what we could have another section, permits, instead of permit standards and prohibitions, we could have a section that lists where it's allowed and not allowed. Like districts allowed, like we have that in a lot of the other bylaws. So instead of having 1 and 2 here, this permit would be number 1. And we could have another section about the districts where they're allowed and not allowed. To make it clear. Does that make sense, or?
of course,
Am I frozen?
you know, I wrote it this way, so personally, I think it's fine that just included in that paragraph. But I would, if you're gonna not allow it in downtown business, then I would just specify districts where it's allowed. And then maybe say at the end of that sentence, just say, you know, school and places of worship are exempt from this requirement or something like that. I'd say it in that same sentence. I'll wordsmith it. And of course, town council may have an issue with that, because I know we did when we were talking about electronic message centers.
Mhm. But I think we could still leave it in, like, I think it still will work. Someone would have to go to court and say, you know, I don't know how many people would say, well, I want a donation bin on my property. I'm in a residence and you're allowing the school, but you're not allowing to me. I mean, they'd have to appeal it and go to court over that.
We could talk to him about it and see what he says.
Okay. So you're just gonna reword 1 and 2, so it's all in one, where they're
Yeah,
allowed and where they're not allowed.
yeah, yeah, I'll think of how to word it, and then we can discuss it at the next meeting.
Okay. So, and that's why I just explained why I crossed that out, because they still should follow the other rules. And then as a board, we have to decide, do we want to allow 1 or 2? I know in the schools, they do have 2, 2 of the schools. So I don't want to limit them. But if you're a small business with a small property, do you really need 2 bins?
Okay,
So the next,
so I have a question about your change to under application.
yep,
So if the property is leased by numerous businesses, so think of the shops.
Mm-hmm.
mm-hmm.
You know, there may be 100 businesses up there all told, so you want like a sign off from every single business that they're okay with the donation bin? That
I mean,
might
you
be
can
a bit
say
much.
except in the highway business, but I did, you know, talk to someone who thought of small business owners, and there are a lot of like small strip malls. Say you have like 3 businesses, And they may not, one of the businesses there might say, I really don't want that donation bin next to my business. Like it's detracting from it's just giving the businesses a chance to speak to the owner and say whether or not maybe they don't even care. Maybe most of them don't care. But say there's like a couple of trendy businesses and then there's another business who says, I want to put up 2 donation bins. The other 2 businesses might say, we really don't want those out there.
Well,
I
isn't it
just,
the property owner that needs to agree to the donation bin, not the businesses?
well, it says that if the applicant is not the owner of the property, so if one of the lessees, one of the tenants comes to the owner and says, I want to do a donation bin, the owner could say, oh, I don't care. But the other 2 businesses there might care.
But that's
Say it's a little strip mall with,
yeah, that's to me,
I don't know.
that's between the business, the property owner and the businesses, the leases. I don't think that's something that the town should be managing. I understand your
Okay.
point, but
Yep.
that would be like saying, in an apartment that somebody can't put out a certain type of welcome mat in the front and you have to all agree to it. It's
Yeah,
Okay.
and
It's
another
just someone who brought it up
example,
to me.
like if you have a donation bin, back to the Northborough crossing, or even, if you think of the hardware store, strip mall.
Mhm.
So maybe you have a donation bin that's next to the hardware store. And then a tenant way at the other end of the strip mall says, hey, I don't want them to have the donation bin, even though I can't see it. It doesn't affect me in any way. That might be
That's under a
pretty
deemed-
arduous to get the sign off from every single business when
Yeah.
some of these malls are very, very large.
Yeah, and I
Okay. I
feel
just,
like that's an agreement with the property owner specifically.
okay.
As
No,
a property
but
owner,
I
I
just
would
wanted
want
to bring
that.
it up.
Yep, no, I understand it, but I feel like that's really, you're getting into the weeds a bit there with that specific situation, and the property owner would basically be the determining.
So
If
then another tenant could go to the property owner and say, get rid
Right.
of it or I'm leaving.
Yeah, or that wasn't
Yeah.
in my agreement, or yeah.
Yeah.
if you wanted to like keep this or some version of it, I think like getting rid of the and in agreement. So if you wanted to make them notify all the businesses, um, but I don't think getting them all to agree with it, that just seems like it would, people would just say no for like out of spite or something. I mean, but
Mhm.
if you wanted to make them notify all the businesses on the property, I'm not sure it's necessary, but
But
if
who's
that's
who's gonna notify them? The property owner? I wouldn't want that job.
mhm.
Okay. I just wanted to
Yeah.
bring it up. I didn't know how businesses would feel if someone
Yeah,
put the, yeah, thing up. But I guess like you're right, they can deal with the owner if they don't
Mhm.
like it.
right.
And then I wanted to add, I think it's up to the select board or someone, I don't know who's gonna pick the fees, but I did want to say schools and religious entities. I didn't know how to word it, like schools and worship. I don't know how we word it. How do we word it on the bylaws for a religious entity?
I'm also curious on that with the fees as to some of these are municipal, the schools are municipal, some of them municipal properties. So how do they negotiate? Who's doing the negotiating with the bin owner about what the fee is going to be? Is that select board or because
So the select board approves all building department fees. So they approve the fee schedule for the building department. And since this would go through the building department, it would just be added to the building department's fee schedule.
Oh, okay. Oh,
And the
I
schools
was
are actually
talking
gonna
about
be exempt.
I was talking about the amount that the school, the municipal property gets from renting the bins.
Oh, yeah, that's just negotiated between the user, so whoever owns the property owner and the bin owner.
Right, but if it's municipal, like the school, who's negotiating what they get?
I guess it'd be the school.
Right. I bet the PTO, because I think the PTO, well, here's Susie's raising her hand. She's part of that.
And
Can
why-
somebody bring her in?
And I understand that. I guess I'm not sure how they know they're getting a better, I feel like there's a difference between what they might be getting and what another business can get. Are they negotiating or are they just, sorry, yeah, go ahead, Susie, sorry.
Hi, Susie Sislika, 8 Emerson Road. It's the PTOs, and it's usually like a group of us, whoever the presidents are. I'm no longer chair. I never will be again, a named board member. I was chair during COVID years, and that was enough for me. But the chairs kind of get together a couple times a year, and they do different fundraisers. And everything, group fundraisers, and they negotiate the fees kind of all together. So it's kind of like a group thing. So they negotiate the group fees, they all go to the same company because they get a better rate that way. So and even sometimes, like, for example, we've had this BMX kind of group come, and they do different messaging like anti-drugs or anti-bullying. And if you get them to come to 2 or 3 schools, they give you a better rate. So it's kind of the same thing with the bins. They give you a better rate because we all use the same company, if that makes sense. So this, whoever the chairs are at the time, do it. You know, we all inherit the same email. You pass along the password, and then next chair kind of goes on, you know.
I guess
whatever.
my question is, who's expert in what the real fees might be? If you're a private business, they might be having completely different fees. So do you do a
Oh, yeah.
comparison?
And depending on the company, and, you know, and who knows where some of these bins are. I mean, I was even thinking, I might even change for the schools to be public schools only, because private schools charge tuition. And nothing, not knocking any of the private schools out there, but they do. And we, you know, you guys are looking at this, you know, I'm hearing everything go back and forth. We, you know, as I said, and I say it all the time, as you guys have heard me say it all the time, we pay for everything. The PTO pays for everything extra from books to the carpets in the classroom, to the, you know, the little balls on the bottom of the chairs to keep things quiet, to the little toys in the room, extra pens. Not even the tissues though. Poppy was homesick today, and she said the tissues were rough, and I was like, oh yeah, you know, it's not in the school budget. She's like, no, we provide them. You know, so she even knows, bring in better tissues, mom. So yeah, the, you know, the PTOs pay for everything. So that was just one thing. If you were looking, when you're looking at this, and, you know, you're trying to decide municipal property, and that might make it easier for you guys to limit it to municipal property. And the schools are part of the municipal property portfolio. You might kind of say municipal property world. You know, the DPWs is sometimes mowing the lawn, sometimes the schools mowing lawn, depends on the year. That might be one way to limit it. Is another thing that I was going to comment on, but I was waiting.
I was trying to leave it. I was trying to leave it with the schools versus all of municipal properties because, like you said, the schools need it for their PTO budget. But if you put one down like at the DPW shed or you put one at the dog park, then you're going to be in competition. So I just put schools versus all municipal properties.
Right. Well, I mean, schools versus like private schools, I was saying.
Yeah.
Like if you do public
So
schools,
should I?
yeah, public schools versus
Yeah.
schools. If you
Well,
narrow it down a little. And then
I know that private schools are also, usually
Needing.
hurting for cash,
Yeah,
because I understand that they don't get, um, well, from what I understand, like private school teachers are generally paid less. They
Yeah.
don't necessarily have as much money per pupil to work with as public schools. So there may be some pushback
Right.
from
yeah.
parents who have their kids in private education. So
I was just thinking of some of the tuition at some of the schools in town that are like 40 grand.
Right.
You know?
That's a whole different thing.
Yeah. So if
Yeah.
you were looking, when I was hearing the discussion about the schools and that would be one thing that you could say there, but just a suggestion if you were looking at
Okay.
different things. But I don't, the thing about the churches, I agree with. The thing about the random ones in town, I agree with. I agree with all of that. But yes, the PTOs, they negotiate, I don't know how often. It was at a set rate when I was there. I wasn't part of the negotiations. We did have it come out the same day as the town cleanup one year, though. I do remember that.
Mm.
They can come out for the truck.
I
Just
was
don't
reading
ever
about Planet Aid this morning because
Yeah.
they said they give 5 cents per pound. So I checked the schools and you guys are getting 6 or 7 cents. So I guess you guys did some good negotiating.
Yeah, never ever put a bag on the ground because they automatically discard it and they won't weigh it.
Mm.
So that is one thing. And I know it says it on the bins, but I know that's really important. And I saw people complaining about it
Yeah.
online because I assume people were cleaning out a lot over break. So never keep the bag in your car if you're driving around and all the bins are full. Just wait. So just wait and and drop them in Milliken or find another bin in a different school because all the schools need it. So
It is funny that we're talking about it and it was a complaint on Facebook just last week.
Yeah. I had to post something in there for another fundraiser. That's all I do is fundraise. All I do is fundraise. But so yes, so never leave a bag of clothes on the ground. Put it in the bins and the PTOs negotiate, whoever is the leader at the time when it's tight, when the contract's up, because you have to sign a contract. But
All right, thank you.
yes, I'm sure you'll hear from me again.
Okay. All right. So how should we word this? Schools, and does anybody know how or Lori, you can think about this for the
yeah, if
next
you could
meeting.
just email your suggested changes to me, and I
Sure.
may just wordsmith things a bit.
Okay. Because at first I had churches and I'm like, oh, that doesn't cover everything.
So just to so like religious and schools, they're going to be exempt from the fees and then like the location of which
Yes.
district it's in.
Yep.
Is it just going to be, I mean, I don't know, are there any churches in the downtown business, or could there be in the future?
There are.
Okay, so do we want to make sure that's also exempted? Is it Trinity Church, or I mean, they have a big parking lot?
Right.
or-
They don't have a bin right now. I actually donated something there and you drop it inside the church, but
Mhm.
I mean, you could have it right here. It could be donation bins are not allowed in residential districts or downtown business. And then it comes out. And then it comes out of the paragraph above.
There you go.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That fixes that sentence. That was a good one.
And there's my other question about just like the definition. Like would the like little free libraries technically be a donation bin under this, or is there a like because I mean it's a container where you donate books that's accessible to and allows the public to deposit items. Do we need to?
Yeah, I've seen those and
I would not consider it a donation collection bin because those you can put a book in, but you can take a book out. Whereas donation collection bins are closed and secured. So you can put bags in, but the only one who can take it out is the vendor. Because of the locking mechanism that's described later on.
I guess I'm just like, do you think that that's obvious from the definition, or is that just kind of because that's what we're intending it to be, that we think that?
To me, it's obvious. If we look down and it talks about size. It seems like those little library books are on personal property. I don't think they would be confused. Is anybody else?
I'm not concerned about it.
Talks about maintenance, disposal. What does everybody else think? How about you, Millie and Bill? Are you concerned about the little book donation bins or?
I
I'm
mean,
I'm a little bit, only because like Carter said, right? You know, if somebody doesn't like those book bins, they could use this to say, oh, that's a collection bin.
yeah,
And it doesn't belong in a residential area, right? A residentially zoned area. So maybe something that states that, you know, with a lock.
or it says here, allows the public to deposit said items, but not remove.
Right. Yeah.
Because the other thing I think about is, I did see some pop up, I would say, food donation, closet, pantries, cabinets that have showed up in some of the cities. Not that, we're going to see that anytime soon in Northborough, but where people can donate food, then people can take food.
Maybe it should say to deposit, set and remove said items without assistance.
To deposit
And
said
remove.
items and remove without assistance
You
and
can
not
deposit them without assistance.
allows the public to deposit and remove said items without assistance.
but we're not removing them.
No,
Is accessible to and allows the public to
to
deposit
deposit said
and
items.
not remove said items without
Yes.
assistance.
Yeah, not remove.
And should it be like in tens? And like, I'm just, if you kind of look at that, are you gonna have people argue, well, the lock's kind of crappy, so they can, the public can remove it, even though
Yeah,
that's
but
not
then
like,
further on, I have language in there that says that it must be locked so that the public cannot remove the items.
okay.
Would it be more correct to say, I know this is going to get grammatical, but allows the public to deposit but not remove?
That's fine.
Then and not remove?
Yeah.
Because
Yep, that's fine.
All right. I can say does not include little library and food fridge. Or I can just leave it at this. Because I mean, I'm sure there are a million things you could
Right.
find.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's the little egg and, farm stands that people have.
Right.
Of course, people should be paying for the eggs, but it can cover a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'll send this to you, Lori.
That'd be
Is
great.
there anybody else in the audience that has any questions? Let's see. I'm just gonna check. Okay, I see a hand up. Hi, can you please state your name and address?
Lisa Maselli, 13 Maple Street. I don't even have a letter up there anymore. Wow, they keep changing how we do this all the time. Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. I'd like to ask a couple questions. Is this going to come back again for public comment later, or is tonight the only night for public comment?
We will have a public hearing. So there will be public comment again. And
Okay.
it sounds like the donation bin and the data centers and the storage containers will be talked about next meeting.
Okay, I think that's great to get more people's opinion on it. So my concern on the municipal properties is that we should only be allowing the schools and not any other fields or anything else like that. So is that what's being understood, or is it not being addressed?
I typed it in there. I typed schools and religious organizations.
So, but that means that the other ones are not going to be able to utilize.
Well, right now it would be private and public schools, but it wouldn't be other municipal areas.
Okay, because that's a big concern. I don't want to see bins on every park we have. I don't
Yep.
think that's right.
So
It goes
doesn't
against
the town hall
bylaw.
have one?
Say that again?
No,
I
the
don't think
town
the
hall
town hall
doesn't
does.
have one.
Okay.
No, and it's not by the bylaw, there's not supposed to be anything else on municipal properties that would put names or anything else on, because it's a form of advertising and you're not the town owned.
Mm.
So it gets kind of murky, but I just wanted to be sure that that was not going to be included.
Yep.
All right. And in terms of the exemptions and stuff, I thought earlier that the exemption was going to be for the charge, for the application fee. But it seemed Carter is thinking there's more exemptions to be had. But are they not going to have the same size? Are they not going to have the same placement? Or is it the placement that's exempt and the size remains the same size?
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think Carter said that. I'll let Carter speak, but I think I don't think he
I was
said that.
referencing the location in terms of which zoning districts. We're not allowing them in residential or the downtown business unless it's a school or a church, because there are the schools and the churches, a lot of them are in residential districts. So they would be allowed, but so it's exempt from the location in terms of the zoning district, not the placement on the property.
Okay, great. All right, that'd be good. Even if you make that even more detailed. So good, that's a good specific. All right, thank you. I'll be at the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Bye-bye now.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Let me see. Anyone else has their hands up? No. Okay, so the last one is the OSRD, the Open Space Residential District. See, I can share that. Carter sent out, Lori sent one out on the 24th, and then Carter sent one out this afternoon with some changes, but they weren't, to me, it didn't seem like there were a lot of changes. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to discuss your changes, Carter? I know at the last meeting this was discussed and you had to
Well,
leave.
Yeah, I don't know if you want me to do this. I didn't kind of have the chance to respond to the comments from the previous meetings. If people
Sure. Do you want to
want,
share it
just
and
kind of
talk,
to
or do you want
clarify
me
some
to?
of the kind of things that didn't seem clear. But let me.
Do you want to share the document then, and I'll stop sharing
Sure, yeah, I can
if that makes it easier.
share. I mean, I have a little. Where are we? Is it this one? Where are we? Oh, that's not where I am. That's the wrong tab.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, this is just kind of a thing. I knew some people were a little bit had questions kind of about why I was suggesting this. And so I just first just want to kind of explain that. So the draft that was proposed a few meetings ago, that is still after several. That's not the first draft of this. That was after some meetings with Lori, that we kind of had a couple different ideas and we kind of were putting them together and talking about it. So this wasn't, I wasn't originally planning a total rewrite of the bylaw. I was originally suggesting just expanding it to residential C and making a few smaller changes to accommodate for the different density and sewer status of that district. I had started I thought of this when the Westboro State Hospital property auction was happening, and kind of recognizing there is a lot of this state-owned open space that if the state was considering wanting to get housing built on it, I didn't think we wanted that whole area to be a sprawled out neighborhood, and that if there were ways to develop that that would allow more open space to be protected there, that would be preferable, even if we don't want that to happen at all. I also know people were commenting that this seemed to not be in line with the master plan. I know most of that was referring to the surveys that were done when the master plan was being made, and obviously there's a wide range of opinions that are expressed in the surveys and among people in the town. But I did just point out a few from our goals in our master plan that I felt really are the changes to this bylaw and this bylaw are well aligned with. I don't know if people want to go through all of these, but yeah, this a lot of them talk about things like wanting to strengthen the protection of natural resources and prevent habitat fragmentation when large tracts of land are developed, or support existing farmlands, promote conservation restrictions and ag restrictions, and all these things that are trying to promote the protection of open space, of farmland, of antique properties, while allowing for development is things that are stated in the master plan. So I'm not just kind of making this stuff up and going against the master plan. This is something that the town has been discussing, of wanting kind of to explore ways that these goals could be reached. Things like identifying short and long-term goals for properties such as the Westboro State Hospital property is kind of exactly what this was starting to. People were against the downtown neighborhood, which I had not originally suggested bringing it to. and don't really have a strong objection to taking it out, but I did want to point out these three goals in our master plan that seem to kind of suggest we do want this kind of thing in the downtown neighborhood district, that the proposed bylaw changes of including it do seem to align with allowing it in the downtown neighborhood district. If we're ready to move on, but yeah, regardless of whether we approve these changes, whether we approve different changes, whether we don't change it, I do think we should be promoting the use of this bylaw more. A lot of, this is ways that when housing and subdivisions are being built anyways, this is offering a way that some of our open space can be protected that would otherwise just be built over and cleared, and yeah. And people are talking about the minimum acreage. I originally was thinking I wasn't sure if we were talking about whether it should be by right or a special permit. But I thought, if we were going to keep some of it by right, increasing the acreage to 10 acres might not, as long as you have a special permit option for some of the smaller properties. I was kind of thinking the by right, which was not part of my original suggestion to change it, but it kind of allows it to be more easier to persuade a developer that we're trying to convince to protect some of the property as open space if they're not going through a special permit process. However, Lori had sent out some of the educational material a few weeks ago, and reading through some of it, I'm not as, I think that the special permit process might not be as much of a disincentive as I had kind of previously understood it to be. So I'm kind of open to that change as well. I thought the points about the unrealistically expensive plans for the yield analysis were very good points to make. I'm not sure that not allowing this or making this process really difficult just because of that is the right move. But if there's other restrictions we wanted to do that would kind of, if we don't want people doing these projects, that some of them already would go anyways, they're still, I think, would be better as an OSRD. And I also don't think that relying on it being too expensive to build housing as a policy is probably not the best move for the town. And then I did have the historic preservation incentives that that were not in what was sent out today, but I had sent out a version of that a month or so ago. And if, depending on how you set that up, it might create a situation where it does make sense to have an OSRD that's under 5 acres. Yeah, that was just kind of my, after the meeting that I didn't get to respond to, those were kind of the comments from what I was hearing at that meeting, and wanted to kind of explain what my thought process at least was.
For that.
All right. So then should I share the one?
I also have it open and
Okay.
ready to share. There was one other document that I just wanted to quickly share because I don't think it was clear the differences between a conventional layout versus an OSRD or conservation's design layout from the last meeting. So I just wanted, this is one of the educational materials that I sent out a few weeks ago. that I thought did a really good job of illustrating the difference between conventional. I don't know what this box is. Okay. Are you guys seeing this weird box?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll just have to page up. So a conventional layout, a conventional subdivision takes a large parcel of land and carves out the entire parcel into house lots. So this illustration, I thought, did a really good job of showing how that works. Whereas in a conservation design, you follow this 4-step design process. So this design process is already identified in our open space residential design bylaw. So the first step in the process is to calculate the traditional amount of lots. And that takes into account wetlands and steep slopes. So our amendments, so right now that is done through a mathematical equation. So the proposal is to change that into a yield plan. So it's not taking a one-size-fits-all approach. It's looking at the unique attributes of a particular parcel and figuring out how many lots that parcel could fit when you take into account our regulations, particularly having to do with wetlands. And as well as other, like we have the Rivers Protection Act buffer. We also have more requirements for like a no-touch zone from wetlands than currently exists in the state law. So the second step in this process is to identify significant natural, cultural, or historic features, such as critical habitat, scenic views, or historic buildings. Number 3 is to concentrate the development away from these features through flexible requirements to achieve a similar amount of lots, but on a smaller percentage of the parcel. And number 4 is to preserve permanently at least half of the land, whether for natural, agricultural, or forest use, and give it to an appropriate conservation commission, land trust, etc. That will ensure its protection in perpetuity. So this is the conventional layout that our subdivision regulations call for today. And this is the open space residential design layout. So same number of lots, but instead of having them spread over the entire parcel of land, they are clustered together on smaller lots, which leaves a tremendous amount of the land left as permanently protected open space. So this is generally better for preserving rural community character, as well as unique features of the land, such as scenic views, wildlife habitats, groundwater, the quality of lakes and ponds, etc. So
Although,
this,
on the picture, it says 38 units above, and the bottom it says 46, so it was more units actually down below that they.
this one had a density bonus, but in our circumstance, it would be the same number of lots. So if it's 38 units up above, it would be 38 units down below. So these little lots in the center here would not be in our design. And then it provided some examples in other communities. And I know last time there was quite a bit of discussion about cost. And this information flyer was put together by Mass Audubon a few years ago. And they identified the cost savings. And I did also send along to you some other studies that had been done in New England. And I sent along Randall Lorentz tutorial. So he did a nice presentation so that you could hear what he had to say. And there was a shorter presentation. So hopefully you folks found all of that information helpful. And then I'm going to, does anybody have any questions about this or any of the other educational materials? Of course, I don't have them in front of me, so just kind of general questions I could get back to you with the details later.
One thing it doesn't mention slope, like we have some pretty steep slopes and they're not developable right now. But I think under the bylaw we have, they would be counted as buildable lots where today they wouldn't be buildable.
How would they not be buildable? I know we discussed this last time.
Financially, because you know, it would be
So
they wouldn't make the money back that they'd have to put into the lot.
that's not necessarily true because, of course, if you think about the Newton Street, I always confuse Newton Street and Howard Street. So I think it's Newton Street, common driveway. So that's the 8 lots that were originally approved, I think, what was it, 11 years ago, 2014? And they are on very, very steep slopes. And of course, here we are 11 years later, and those units are being built. So, you know, as the cost of land increases, then folks find a way. And folks who have a lot of deep pockets are willing to spend a significant amount of money on construction. So you may think that they're not financially feasible to build, but given the right buyer, they may very well be buildable. So our conventional subdivision design does not say anything about steep slopes. So that's not part of the criteria that you can look at for A&R development. And so the same is true here.
So I guess
I talked to someone with 18 acres and they could feasibly financially do 3 properties because of the steep slopes. But under this analysis of our bylaw, they could do 9. So now we're going to add 9 houses to our housing stock. So it's going to start bringing us below our 10% affordable housing quicker than if we just left it the way it was.
I don't understand how they can only build 3 today, but then they'd be able to build 9 under this bylaw that currently exists.
Because of the ledge and the slopes. It wouldn't be financially feasible to go up and build the 9 houses because it would be so expensive, you'd never get that money back. But the way
But
our
this
bylaw is
bylaw
written,
currently exists.
it doesn't include the slopes, so they can't do it. Kind of like the one on Hudson Street, he has 13 acres, but he's
But if
never
that's
developed
true,
it.
why doesn't he submit an application tomorrow? Because
Listen,
this bylaw already exists.
well, no, it's cheaper if you change the difference between today and what this bylaw is doing is right now, if you're an RA or RB, you can do this by law, but it's single family homes. You're opening it up to duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes. I mean, that really makes it a lot more affordable and financially
I guess,
able
I
to
mean, the
do
way
it.
I see it, if you don't want people building on these steep slopes, then we could maybe change a different bylaw that would prohibit a traditional subdivision from building on those steep slopes if we don't want that to happen. But if it's allowed, I mean, it's just I don't think that just kind of betting on people not having money to do something is the right housing policy for the town.
I think making all these changes at once aren't right. Like I went to the Randall Ardent and I read about them recently, and it was in Harvard. So I went to Harvard and I looked at their open space residential design. They kept it at single family homes, I think. I know Westboro did. But in Harvard, what they did was they picked the farming district and they put their open space residential design on certain areas, not the whole town. What we're doing is opening up this to the whole town. We're adding RC in it, all the residential districts except for downtown neighborhood. And not only are we opening it up to the whole town, we're also changing the housing density in the whole town. Like right now in RA and RB, it's single family homes. Our open space design is single family homes. Now we're saying you can do 1 to 4 units and there's no setbacks.
But you
It's
do
really
realize
changing the
that
zoning in the whole town.
you will permanently protect a greater amount of open space by allowing, instead of having 4 single-family homes spread out, you would possibly have 2 duplexes on smaller parcels. So let's say that they decided that they wanted to do 4 single-family homes on 20,000 square foot lots. And because you still only have 4 units, so that would be, 4 units spread out over 2 acres versus if you did 2 duplexes, so you still have 4 units, but now you have them on 1 acre. So then you have an extra acre of permanently protected open space. So you're not ending up with more units. What you're ending up with is more permanently protected open space for, habitat, for scenic views, for recreation purposes, historic preservation, for farming. Instead of it just being for yards.
I would think if this was on a specific area, like I know you mentioned there was a developer looking, and I think Carter said an open space, there was a parcel they were looking at. If this was on the one parcel that we wanted to save or on the farms, it might be more palatable. But to me, you're opening up housing types, which changes the character, but you're opening up all the housing types in all the different districts, which was in the master plan that people didn't want.
Yeah.
And you're also just opening it up to all these parcels that previously aren't developable. I know we can go back and forth forever and you can say they're developable, but if they were, the developers would have developed them by now.
But how many crazy lots do we have in town with extremely steep slopes? We have them all over town. People are building on those crazy lots every single day.
We'd have to do
So,
an analysis.
and
I mean,
super steep lots.
Mhm.
So this is like, if we take the example of the Newton Street common driveway. So you still end up with 8 lots. But instead of having all those squiggly lines that, make all these weird twists and turns, you just have those 8 houses aggregated together, and then you might have, 15 acres of permanently protected open space. Right now, of course, I've been up there. I've done a couple of site visits up there, and there were hiking trails. I know that a lot of the abutters used the hiking trails for many years. So those hiking trails could have remained. And, the abutters and the folks who live in the development would be able to enjoy those hiking trails. The scenic views would be protected. You still end up with 8 lots. It's just that
Millie,
now you have, permanently protected open space instead of having those weird, squiggly, crazy lots where nobody knows where their front yard is versus their backyard versus the side yard.
we changed that with the lot formula last town meeting, so we shouldn't have any of the squiggly lots anymore.
Can I just,
Sure, Millie?
again, we're spending a lot of time on this, and that's okay, but I'm still trying to get back to the point that we do have the open space bylaw in place in residential A and residential B. And I don't believe once it's been used. And I'm trying to figure out why we're trying to expand it into residential C if we really haven't made it an appealing bylaw for the residential A or residential B. What are we missing? I think what we're missing is it's not appealing to anybody. I don't think the way that it's being promoted, and maybe to Carter's point, we need to promote what we have more and then see really what we should do to expand it. I don't think it's financially desirable for developers. I really don't. So do we know the reason why nobody's used it? Do we have any feedback from any developers? Has it ever been? I know it was discussed at one point for a piece of property that we looked at over by the pond. And I thought that would have been a great application, but it didn't materialize. So we've never had it used. I'm not sure I'm finding it reasonable to say, well, we should make more than half of our town now under this bylaw. I mean, and going into residential C, there's only effectively most of that is acreage wise is owned by the town currently. And then, so it really is only when I looked at the spreadsheet or the information that was sent out, only 23 of those lots out of almost 90 lots are privately owned and would be maybe up for development. So I feel like we're spending a lot of time on this, which I think is worth going through. I'm just not sure why.
Yeah, I
Okay, thank you.
did count up. Of course, I did include in the list parcels that were town-owned that are not permanently protected. And I came up with 29 parcels in the 5 to 10 acre category and 35 parcels in the 10 plus acre category. I did strike out any of the land that is owned by the Conservation Commission, the Commonwealth of Mass, DCR, Division of Fish and Wildlife,
Yep.
cemeteries,
Yeah,
etc.
I mean, I came up with like 32 lots out of 90, almost 90, that are seemingly that this might apply to. But I guess my point is I don't understand why we're looking to expand this when what we have in place has never been used. What are we missing? Why are we not able to promote that?
Maybe we should promote it more. Maybe we haven't in the past, but
And
I
right,
don't
how
think
would
there
we
should
go
be
about
major
doing that?
changes. In my
How do we
opinion, I
go-
don't.
You know, I think it's a great, I think it's a great option. But is it economically feasible for developers? Are we getting any feedback that says, actually, I can make more money doing single family homes? What is it that we're missing?
I guess I'm not what I like at least I see a development like this in almost all cases would be better in the public's interest, better for the environment, and better for the town than a traditional subdivision.
And
I don't really see why there would be any reason we would deny a special permit for this were it to come forward, unless it was not actually, doing what this was intended to do. Um, so I guess I'm not like I think ideally you would just have this as the subdivision rules and regulations for most cases. But I don't think people want like it's. I think in general, people in town would prefer there to not be too many rules. They generally don't like it when the town tells them what they can and can't do. And this is changing the rules. So we are not requiring them to develop in a way that is worse for the town and worse for the environment. This is giving them more options.
but the developer is the one who makes the decision about whether it's economically feasible. And that's where, number one, what is the demographics for people who want that type of lifestyle? What's the cost? And again, we've never had it used. Why is that?
Be like you said, the demographics. I mean, there are a lot of people who might not want to share their backyard with 20 other people. They like their, yard and their privacy. I don't know. Like we're just guessing,
And if
but
I'm a developer and I buy 100 acres, and let's see 50% of that, I can put to conservation. But I got to make up the money that I spent on the property that I've spent to do those 4 steps, which is evaluate all of the, whatever those 4 steps were, the habitats, and carve out this area. I'm not sure that's as simple and, as appealing to a developer. I understand what the appeal is, but as a person who might develop something, I don't know that I would find that appealing, number one, but also, why haven't we had this used? And I think that's the bigger.
You need to go away, babe.
You're doing great.
So, I can tell you from personal experience with the very similar OSRD bylaw that's in the town of Millbury. So there were some differences in the bylaw. It's a by right process. It does allow other options. So it allows single family, 2 family, 3 family, and up to 4 units per structure. The planning board in Millbury pushed it. So they pretty much told applicants that they weren't interested in conventional subdivisions. They wanted open space residential designs. So while I was in Millbury, there were 2 large projects. The first project was 199 units. No, 99 units. And it was exclusively single-family homes. Those units went for quite a bit of money. All of the units had access to the permanently protected open space.
Mm.
And It was a very popular development, and the folks who moved into that development really ran the gamut. There were a lot of families that moved in, a lot of kids in those neighborhoods today. The other major development I have mentioned before, that's the Clearview Country Club. It used to be a 9-hole golf course. There are 142 units. It's nearing completion today. Those are all duplexes. They all, once again, have access to the open space. The total parcel size was 117 acres. Of that, 25 acres were developed for the units. So the balance of the land became either permanently protected open space owned by the Conservation Commission. Some of the open space that directly abutted the units was maintained by the homeowners association. So it does have a conservation restriction on the land, so it can't be built on, but it's maintained by the homeowners association. In that case, the units that currently are available average about $650,000. There is a very large number of empty nesters who live up there. So folks who were looking to downsize, 55 and over type people, who sold their houses and moved into the development. There are also some families, although not that many.
So-
There are also some younger professionals just starting out without children. So that kind of runs the gamut. You know, these units do tend to go for the higher end for the type of development. And the reason for that is the open space is attractive.
I understand
So
that. I
people
still
see
don't.
that as an amenity.
Yeah, and I understand that, but it hasn't happened in our town. So when you say the planning board pushed it, how do we do that? What does that look like? You know, I'd be happy to advocate for it, but I've never seen one. I've seen one come before us, and we were in favor of it. It just didn't materialize. And so I guess I feel like, you know, listening to some of what the residents have said, they still don't. I don't think they're really open up to two families or three families, but that would be for town meeting to decide. I just feel we're going to spend a lot of time on this, and I'm not convinced that we're doing it the right way.
Well, it may also be that the right property hasn't come forward. So, Chris, I've been here for almost 4 years, and the vast majority of the projects that have come before have been tiny projects. So they've been, of course, now we have a preliminary subdivision, Harrington Lane wrapped up while
But
I was
those weren't
here.
under, only
That
one
was
was
only
under.
4 lots.
But was that open space?
No, that was a
No.
conventional subdivision. And of course, the preliminary plan is the one that's before you today. That's
Right.
also a proposed conventional subdivision. And then most of the other projects are A&R lots. So you might see, you know, 2 here, 3 or 4 there. Of course, Reservoir Street. You know, they could have been open space projects.
Right. Why
They
weren't
opted to do A&R and then common driveways.
And again, that must have been more financially and more economically or time wise. I mean, is there a time element? I just,
Well,
there's something
you
we're
know,
missing.
if I were a developer, I mean, there's the guarantee, there's the certainty of A&R lots. You guys can't put any conditions. It's a 5-minute approval, and they know they have these lots.
Right. And
So,
that doesn't change.
so under the open space residential design, that's a special permit. So they may pay for all the engineering and end up with nothing in the end.
Okay, I saw Bill had his hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Just want to give him a chance.
That's okay.
Sorry.
I just, Amy, I noticed something here where Lori has her screen right now, that might answer the question you had. It says, right in that, what is conservation design? Conservation design looks at the existing characteristics in a landscape, right? Not making modifications, existing. So, that might answer your question about, well, they can go and blast a hill. Well, no, they can't because that's not existing. They're making modifications at that point. But, to Millie's point, why this hasn't been done, in my mind, and again, we're making all these hypotheticals, right? About what an investor, we're not investors, right? We don't go out and build properties, right? What they might do, what they might see. As somebody who lived in a limited area community in Marlboro and then moved out to Northborough, I can tell you that more land is better, especially when you have a family, right? Those might just be easier to sell,
Yeah.
right? That could be all it is, and that's why they don't use it. And really, in my mind, there's no incentive for them to use it. So, why not use up all the space, right? And make bigger lots. The problem is that the bigger lots are what are going to get us in trouble in about 5 years when we're under the 10%. Right?
I don't agree with that though.
What,
Well,
our trend is going that way. The data is going that way.
Right,
Right?
but
You
if
can
you
look
do
at the
this,
data over the last 20 years, right? 20 years ago, we were just above 11, and now we're at 10.2. The data shows a downward trend. And, there's going to be a census in, 2030. And when that data comes out, we're going to be somewhere around 8 or 9%.
but the OSRD wouldn't help.
this would not help it.
It could if we did
No,
it
it'd
right.
have to be big lots. Like you'd have to allow it on lots over 20 acres. You couldn't allow it on a 5 acre because you're going to get a lot of small houses, a lot of small
Units.
It's not going to go over 9 units.
How
Well, again, you mentioned 13 acres. If you've got 13 acres that you could build on, right? How many units is that?
Well, that
13?
was the Hudson Street.
Right. I'm
it
using a
depends on the
hypothetical.
district.
Yeah.
But
But
let's
I
say,
think
let's
the important
average.
thing to consider also is that land is finite. So the town is eventually going to reach the point where every developable parcel of land has been developed. And so, this is a way to permanently protect your open space without any cost to the town. So,
can tell
maybe
you
the
where-
town just wants to carve out every square inch into a developable lot, but that's not very good for the environment. It's certainly not very good for wildlife, and it's not very good for water quality. I understand that the town, is tapped into MWRA, but when you're talking about the quality of the rivers and the ponds and whatnot. So, I mean, it is important to have some areas that are wild. And if we just sprawl all across the landscape, then there aren't going to be wild areas eventually,
I actually think that Northborough's done really good. We have Edmonds Hill, we have Mount Pisgah. If you look at all of the land that we've saved, we have a lot. But One other point I just wanted to make forth too is we talk about taxes for the town, and we're talking now what's good for the developers, what's good for the residents too, because when we talked to the last point, this open space that gets donated to the town has no tax implications. But I don't know about you guys, but if you opened up your recent tax bill, my taxes went up $2,600. And I called the assessor and I said, that's a lot because I thought the average was going to be like 1,000. I went up 2,600 and she walked me through it. My house assessment went up 20,000 in a year. My land assessment went from 260 to 380. So my land on my property is now assessed at 120,000 more a year. And they're getting taxed $2,600 on it from just me. If we lumped my neighborhood together and donated all the land, then there's not going to be a tax revenue for the town. And there's a big push right now that our taxes are going up. We need new schools. We need a new fire station. If we donate the land and don't pay taxes on it, then I don't know, could come at a cost.
Yeah,
I
but
know I
the
would say,
educational materials that I sent you demonstrated that there is an added value when the house is proximate to permanently protected open space. So even though your house may be on a 20,000 square foot lot, if it's abutting 10 acres of permanently protected open space, then your house on the 20,000 square foot lot may be valued more than the identical house on a 2 acre lot in a conventional subdivision.
And
wouldn't
So
help people who are
there's
trying to
no
buy houses.
loss in value. And the permanently protected open space doesn't provide taxes, but it doesn't require any services either. So it's neutral when it comes to taxes. So it's essentially like non-existent.
Not sure, but I see two hands up. I see Susie's hand up. Can you unmute Susie?
Oh, sorry, I was waiting for the box to come up. I had spoken with Carter about this, and I understand and I appreciate very much his point of view and his motives on changing this bylaw a lot. So it was really good to speak with him on this. However, the timing of the bylaw, especially with the January 26th or 22nd meeting that is coming up with the affordable housing, which is also being sponsored by two real estate agents and developers in town. I would have to say no to this. I just, I also know that a developer had approached Lori about this and she wanted to use this bylaw in conjunction with it. She had mentioned that in the last meeting after Carter had left. And I can't support it at this
No,
time.
no, that wasn't quite right. If I can just clarify, I get
Sure.
phone calls all the time from folks who are inquiring about zoning and development that they may be interested in doing on various parcels of land. So there
Someone
is
had
a
asked you,
large parcel of land
yeah,
that a developer is interested in acquiring. And currently they can, it is in, I believe, the residential B district. So they can already apply under this bylaw. This
okay.
isn't about
So they can
modifying the
use this
bylaw
bylaw.
to facilitate a development. It's about, people are constantly asking about development proposals. Some of them result in actual development and others I never hear from again. But there have been inquiries about large developments in the town of Northborough. So somebody had asked me the question, is somebody inquiring? And I said, yes. People are inquiring all the time. So these modifications are coming out because I believe that this will be an improvement because of the fact that folks want to protect open space and maintain community character. And that's something that has been expressed in the master plan, as Carter pointed out. And, you know, it is my professional duty to help implement the master plan. So this is my professional suggestion to accomplish the goals set forth in the master plan. That's it.
I think
You
there's
guys
two
can
sides.
choose to go forward with it or not, but it won't, you know, it's not about, you know,
I think that
developing faster or, you know, helping out a developer. I'm not working for a developer. That's not what this is about.
I think there's two sides of consequences that can happen with it. And I think that's what I'm concerned with is the unintended consequences from it in the areas in which this doesn't exist right now in town. The areas in which this bylaw doesn't exist, like Amy had talked about earlier. And that's what I'm concerned about. And annual town meeting is in 3 months now. I had to think about it for a minute. It's in 3 months. And when we go forth and we're explaining this to a room full of people, that it's probably going to be a lot less on night two. Hopefully it's night two, which is going to be a lot less than night one. Maybe it'll be still night one. Let's pray that it'll still be night one, but it'll be a lot less. And people don't understand property law. They're not like property law lovers like all of us right here, right now. You know, it's going to be confusing. They're not going to understand it. And I am barely wrapping my head around it because, as I said, there's two sides of it. I see the developer consequences. Like, I didn't see the open space side of it until I met with Carter and understood his side and what he was trying to do. Like, and then I was like, oh, yes, now I see what you're trying to do. And like, I hope he understood like a little bit of my side. Like, he saw my concerns, like, I had very grave concerns about it. And I understood totally what he's trying to do. And I just feel like there's unintended consequences and that this isn't going to be where it would need to be in April for it to go forth.
Is there a reason why we don't just consider this an expansion only in residential A and residential B? And why include our residential C?
Yeah.
If I mean, residential C has a lot of open space that is not currently protected and is probably the most likely large parcels of open space to be developed in the near future.
I'm not sure I would agree with that. We did that assessment on residential C, and yes, it has a lot of open space. But again, the acreage is 60 something percent of it is town or state owned.
The
So
state
you
is
already-
auctioning off property to build housing currently.
Right, but there's nothing that's saying they can't do something like this. It's just saying that it's not, again, we haven't had it come to us.
That you do have the golf course.
I understand that. And that's currently
I
it's
mean,
got business
yeah.
on. So that's the other, there's the golf course that is 14% of the open space that's there.
There's
Residents, 23%.
well, I mean,
Town, state, 62%, and railroad is 1%. You know, I just feel like, again, we're going to spend a lot of time on this. I don't think it has bad intentions. I just think that we don't know ultimately what the bigger picture is with the residential RC, because we really haven't had any interest in it in RA or RB.
My big concern too is I read the state sample and I went to the classes with Randall. I was at that. And if you look at Harvard, like it's very specific. They picked specific parcels like the farms or the golf courses. We're opening this up to the whole town. We're changing density and we're changing where this is allowed. Like we are opening this up, and I know it said site characteristics. That's very high level. You have to look at exact numbers, like of what can be developed. You can just look at the plan and say, okay, I could put 9 houses there, but you really couldn't if you have other things there, like ledge and slopes. So I just think this is opening up something. This is changing the zoning in our whole town. This isn't just doing an open space residential, because that should be very particular to certain areas, not the whole town.
What you just said about opening it up to like the farms, how they narrowed it down to like the farms in Harvard, that would kind of cover, Carter, what you had been saying about the legacy farms, that you were concerned about the families. So that's one thing that you could talk about for the future too. That you guys, that would be something to look at. And Amy, what you had said earlier, I just wanted to echo that I supported the point about the numbers and the 10%. I know you had mentioned it at the last meeting, but I just wanted to echo support about that. And then also what Millie had said about like what was feasible for developers, because you can't tell people what they can build. I mean, how many times have we said that at ZBA meetings? You can't tell people what to build. You can't tell people what kind of houses to build, and you can't tell people who to live there. So those are all things, so if they want to build big houses, even if we want a development with small houses, you know what I mean, for these open space communities or whatever, to have something like what Lori was describing in Millbury, which, I mean, we're not a Millbury community, but we want something like that. These were all thoughts that I was having, that I was trying to remember, that I wanted to like reiterate why I don't think this is, why I'm not in support of this, basically. But
in the state sample too, when they picked out the district where they were putting it, they did pick out, like, you could as a town say, all right, I want to drop this on Juniper Hill Golf Course. And it can be like 80% single family, 10% duplexes, and 10% multifamily. Like as a town, when you're making this overlay, they laid out what percentage, 50% single family. Like it just wasn't open-ended. Our bylaw is open-ended to the whole town. In any type of housing. We're not laying out that we want to see certain percentages of certain types of housing. I feel like it's going too big, too fast.
Right.
But I mean, as currently we've changed it to be a special permit, so we would be saying whether they can or can't do this.
I don't know. But I do see Lisa's hands up. So do you mind? I'm going to let her speak.
Oh yeah, thank you. Oh, and I didn't say my address, but I've said it already a lot tonight, so I hope that is okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Lisa? Miss Ellie?
Hit my unmute button, and when I'm done, please mute me back. I have so many people around me. I say things that I'm not talking to you guys all the time. All right, hi. This is Lisa Maselli, 13 Maple Street. I have a lot of things to talk about because of the conversation. There were things that were said in this conversation that I get a little bit nervous about. The first thing, and I never thought I'd even say this, is that we talk about the golf course being available land. What happened to our amenities in town? Why do we want to talk about building on the golf course? Are we really that much in need of people and places to build? If we take everything that we have as an amenity, I don't understand how that makes our lives any better. So when it comes to talk about the golf course as being available, can we like remove that from conversation for a while? I don't see any big need that this is coming to town. And when we get to a point of being fully developed, well then what's going to happen to that 10% we're so scared about? We won't be able to do anything about that, will we? Because we'll go under the 10%. We won't be able to build anymore unless we take down houses and we build multifamilies. I don't want to see that. I didn't move to Northborough for that reason. And I don't understand what this push and push and push is. Nobody has come to my knowledge asking to say that we just need more development here. I haven't heard that. I don't know. Maybe you've had so many people come that are residents and not developers. Because the whole reason for zoning is to protect the residents. That's why we have it. And you want to take it away and make it free for everybody to do what they want to develop. Again, how does that protect the resident? Now, the tax bill of all of us went up ridiculously high to a point where you're gentrifying Northborough. That I myself, being on a fixed income and a senior, have going to have to look for something next year because I can't absorb anymore. The more you build, the more resources you need. I can't afford it. So you have to decide what you want your town to be like. You want to move forward and build what are you building for when you're not going to have the people and the cross section of people that you once wanted in a town? You're going to have people who are certainly younger and maybe can afford it because they're making six figures. But the cost of homes being over $600,000 for a senior, it's impossible to purchase because once we sell our property, we don't have that much money left. And at 70 and plus, you're not going to get a loan. So you're actually just gentrifying an age group now. And you have to think about that as well. And let's see, one way out there. No. And then pretty much, going to duplexes, we've put a moratorium on because we wanted to get some control of it. We don't have it on now, but there was a great concern on duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes. What is going on? It is a great concern, and I don't feel I'm just speaking for myself. I just think we have to slow it down. We have to look at what the people are asking for, not what the developers are asking for.
I don't think they're asking for it. That's
right. Right. I don't think they're asking for it.
But I want to know why. And that's
But also this is about being prepared.
Prepared for what?
I'm not, nobody's saying develop the golf course, please come to town and develop the golf course. This is about being prepared for when it's inevitable at some point the golf course will be developed. It could be 5 years from now, it could be 20 years from now, it could be 50 years from now, it could be 100 years from now. At some point, development occurs. So it's about being prepared for that inevitability.
Okay,
if
well,
it's not the golf course, it could be the farms. The farms could come up. And, one never knows. Right now, it seems like they're not going to be developed. But if the head of the farm, Mr. Yellick, dies and gives the land to his kids, and his kid lives in California and doesn't want to own the farm and sells it for the highest amount of money, and it goes to a developer, it's about being prepared.
We don't need
it's
to prepare
about
right now.
saying,
We're not in it. We don't need it
right now.
We don't need it, Lori. We don't need it. We don't need the long dissertation either. This has gone on for hours on this planning meeting and the one prior to. To continue to talk about it, to try to force it down people's throats is not what we need to hear. And that's why I finally called in. We need to let this go now and maybe do it in a few years because we are coming in to an enormous amount of expenses that we as a town cannot afford to pay. So there's nothing to be prepared. Why should I prepare if I'm going to be gone next year? I think we have to be realistic. We have to put it out there. If the residents are that hot on doing it, then let the residents come forward. But I'm sorry, I'm speaking with great emotion, and I'm going to leave the room now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Carter?
Just a couple points about the golf course or the golf courses. one of the golf courses, I know there's been talk that it is likely going to be for sale within the next few months. I mean, I don't want it to be developed, but it's possible. And so that's just, you know, something to consider, is this isn't something that is totally unrealistic. Voting no on these bylaw amendments is not going to lower anyone's taxes. It's just, it's a zoning bylaw. It's not going to, yeah, it's not going to lower your taxes. It's so that's just another point. I mean, this is that these are all issues, but what this is doing is it's about protecting open space, and it is allowing the nature and character of the town that I think most of us do love, and one part of it to be protected without costing the town money to do so. Yeah, that'd be my response there.
Thanks. I see Brad Blanchett with his hand up. I'm gonna allow you to talk.
Hi, Brad Blanchett, 6 Rodney Terrace. One of the questions, Amy, that you brought up earlier, a hypothetical, and this is how I'm interpreting it. So tell me if I'm incorrect or not. So if there's a 9-acre parcel of land today, only 3 acres are buildable. Can the developer come and say, well, I have 9 acres, I can put 18 homes, and they get crammed onto those 3 acres?
Yeah, but they have to, there's supposed to be a formula, but the person I talked to that had the 18 acres said right now, fiscally, financially, with the slope and the ledge, financially to make the money back, they could develop 3 houses.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's no slope calculation, or right now, if they looked at the whole 18 acres and carved it out to put houses on it, they could get 9 homes. So it depends on how
Right.
our bylaw is written, and if you could quantify slope in it, and you'd have to cover a lot of bases and hope there weren't any unintended consequences.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a hypothetical. I mean, that's a loophole I think that developers would take advantage of. Lisa just mentioned it earlier, are the moratorium on duplexes. The duplex development was getting out of control, and the residents came and said, well, we need to pause this and give it a timeout. Because one of the reasons is it was impacting the character and the rural nature of the town. Now we're hearing about triplexes and quadplexes. That flies in the face of what the residents wanted with that. Also, like right now in residential C, you can't develop on that land. Is that correct?
On the golf course, or
No, the
open
like, 'cause
space
we're adding
residential?
residential C to this bylaw. Is residential C not oh God, what am I trying to say?
You can't do an open space residential design in residential C. So if the golf course were to be developed, there would be no open space option. So it would be a conventional layout.
Got it. Okay.
So
All right.
that means just spread the houses over the entirety of the parcel.
Although if you're talking about Indian Meadow, they looked into it when they did this neighborhood, and because of the wetlands and everything, they can only do like 3 or 4 houses, which is why they didn't, build houses.
Got it. Okay.
At least that's what I heard, if that's the golf course being talked about.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, and just listening to this discussion and the discussion we had last month and thinking about all the hypotheticals, I mean, I'm glad we moved it to special permit instead of by right. Just based on these conversations, I don't think it's ready to, move forward, in my personal opinion. I think we still need to sort out what the hypotheticals look like, all the different scenarios that are going through. And I know we have these grandiose ideas with the open space of having pickleball, pools, things like that. I mean, what's to say that they're not going to do that? It's just going to be sitting there open space. So that's my 2 cents on that. Thank you.
Thanks. Bill?
Yeah, to the point that Brad just brought up. I know, that I mentioned it earlier, the thing that Lori had on there were existing landscape conditions, right? Maybe if we write that into the open space, into the part of the calculation, does that make sense? So that way we can't, if you can't build on the slope, if the slope's not buildable, then it's not part of the calculation. So your 3 units are still 3 units. I know that people are the people on the call, there are plenty of other reasons why they're against this. I get that. But I don't want something that's that simple to fix to be the issue.
Well, I think
That's all.
we looked at the parcels in residential C, but we didn't pull out the ones in A and B, like if we're gonna change the types of density.
But I'm just saying, if it's that easy of a fix, just to add those 3 words, right? Existing landscape conditions. Why don't we just add that?
But those aren't the 3 words. You'd have to set the type of slope. Like it's subjective. Like you might say we could build on 10%, or someone can say we could build on a 20% slope. It's all who's picking the slope.
Well, but those are I'm not an architect, but I'm assuming there are probably architects out there who would tell you what type of slope you can build on or not. And in that case, right, then it doesn't matter if there's a slope or not, because they could still build on it. So they're not saying I can build 3, but I can build 9 if I can take down the slope. Well, no, they're saying they can build 9. So then they have to scrunch in their 9 and provide the open space. It still works with the calculation.
Open space
So
now.
I just pulled up the bylaw. So the language currently says the base maximum number of dwelling units allowed in the OSRD shall be derived from the yield analysis described in subsection J below. The purpose of the yield analysis is to demonstrate the maximum number of lots that could be developed on the site under a conventional plan in full conformance with zoning, subdivision regs, health codes, wetland bylaws, and other applicable requirements. So that's in there. And then further on in the bylaw, it talks about this is new language that I included to kind of get at the slope concern. The analysis should include identification and analysis of primary and secondary conservation areas. So in the secondary conservation areas would be included steep slopes, 15% or greater.
I don't even know 15%. I don't know. But
that's generally considered like the maximum grade in a roadway is 10%, if that gives you any sort of visual.
I see Anthony has his hand raised.
I think just based upon how this night has gone and previous nights, I can only imagine how town meeting will go. And I don't think it will go well. But I still think it's important to look at things like the golf course and whatever farms may lie in RC and protect those. Can we carve out some areas that we think should be protected, or at least have that in sights, instead of just doing all of it?
I agree. I mean, I think that would be a better place to start and more palatable than the whole town. Carter, yep.
Yeah, I thought that doing something like this would be way less popular than what I'm currently proposing. But if you like, I think it would make a lot of sense to kind of go through the RC district and kind of, I don't know, would be an overlay or splitting the district or something to identify parts that are currently large amounts of open space that we would want developed differently than, you know, building North Gate 2 over the golf course. I mean, it's
Again,
yeah, I think I kind of wasn't expecting. I thought that would be more of an extreme step. But if that's what people are open to, I'm not against it.
I think I'm not in a huge favor of that, because then again, you're putting in a zoning thing specifically for a certain spot that may or may not ever become available for development in that sense. I'm not a huge fan of that. I 1000% love the idea of this type of development. 100,000%. I just think we're missing how it should be applied and proposed and promoted.
So what you're saying is you think we should wait a year and think about how we should promote it or talk to people, or
I would
what do
love to see how we should promote it, and maybe that's something that Lori can chime in on with, you know, Millbury saying that the planning board was pushing for this. And so how do we put this out there that we have this? It's a great, law, regulation that we have in residential A and residential B. How do we promote what we have?
before making changes?
I did have a recent conversation about the large parcel that's in the residential B, and I did talk about the OSRD. And the response that I got is that they wanted to do a duplex development. They didn't want to do a single family development. So it's not allowed. It doesn't allow for duplexes. So that was a recent conversation.
And so maybe I'm saying that that's something we can look into to change to residential A and residential B. Apply some of this to those areas and see what happens.
So you're saying allow duplexes? Like, I feel like in 2018, the big pushback was changing to duplexes, and
I agree. I think the town will say no, but you know, I think that's a softer approach than adding a whole new district and adding that. This is a lot.
is a lot. I think we should, I don't know, I looked at other towns, like before we push forward to something, maybe even talk to other towns. I mean, Westboro is 10 acres and above, and they're using single family. And then, like I said, I looked at Harvard because that's where they held this seminar. And they were on the farmland. So they did pick out districts. They picked out a farmland district with big properties, and that's the only place they put this.
Yeah.
And that's actually what Northborough did before. Northborough has the whole section of the bylaw for bigelows. Should bigelows ever sold, there's already something carved out in our bylaws that allows single family, multifamily duplexes. And that was the thinking versus changing the whole town. Like, I think changing the whole town could have a lot of unintended consequences. I think you're changing the character. I think it's changing the density. I think it's against what I actually read from the surveys in the town, in the master plan. I don't know.
Marty, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, like points all taken, but I guess when we talk about the kind of unintended consequences of the zoning changes, I'm kind of curious what you think are the intended consequences of our current zoning. You know, our town's character has changed dramatically, even in the amount of time I've lived here. We look and feel like a very different town than we did 20 years ago. And part of that is because we have had quite a lot of pretty significant amount of housing development in the town that has happened in a way that took out a lot of these, you know, farmhouses, a lot of this open space. that we had and is now gone or is in the process of being built to where it isn't. So I guess I think like I understand that this is big changes to an option, not a required mint, but an option. But it's because I do think we should be changing how development is occurring in our town to be less consumptive of all of the open space.
Been on the board since 2014, and Kathy, every time we tried to make a zoning change that changed density, she said RA, RB, and RC were fully planned out for like what our municipalities and what the schools can handle. So anytime we talked about making a change, there was a huge analysis of how, like, we took a whole year with the duplex moratorium, and they looked into, you know, what size the frontage should be and what size the lot spaces should be. And there's another town, it might be Berlin, they have a growth bylaw. So these towns only grow so much a year, so you can absorb what comes. So you don't want to do big changes all at once because it may be more than the schools and the towns can absorb all at once. And if you get a big development in the schools, then you have to hire more teachers and you have to do different things that cause the taxes to go up. And that's a big concern. So Kathy used to say, you know, before changing anything, we had to do a whole impact analysis. So if you're going to change this in all these districts, she would probably take a whole year moratorium to sit back and see what are the consequences of doing this and can our town absorb it? It's not just like, okay, we're going to take a month and this looks pretty good, so let's bring it to the people. And the people really don't know what we're trying to do. So it could have unintended consequences. We could get some big developments that all of a sudden cause something that we need to build to raise all the taxes of the people who are here. And I know mine just did go up $2,600.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge jump in a year. If it goes up another $2,600, like my kids will never even not only be able to buy the house, they won't be able to pay the taxes.
Well, right now, the town isn't going through a building boom. So the average number of units built per year are like somewhere around 9 or 10. And most of those units are A&R lots. Some of them are on common driveways. So there are very few subdivisions that are being built today. So right now, this bylaw has been in place for the last 15 years and hasn't been used. So I don't think that just you know, providing this option in residential C is going to mean that there's a huge boon in development. It's just
think
an
changing.
option. That's it.
I know. But changing the types of housing being offered, multifamily, that's a
Well,
big
right
change.
now we allow duplexes, and how many have been built in the last year? One? I mean, we allow duplexes in a few different zoning districts, and we saw a total of 1. I think there's
Well,
only
I think
been
as a board, we have to decide.
2 permitted in the 4 years I've been here.
I think as a board, we have to decide, do we want to continue talking about this? Do we want to take another year? Do we want to promote it? Like, where do we want to go forth? Do we, you know, because it's 9/19 and we could keep going back and forth forever for the next, we have about 1 or 2 more meetings before our public meeting for a town meeting. And I don't know where others stand, but I know I'm not ready to bring this forward, as you know, because you know how I feel about it. But I do think there's a lot in this bylaw to bring forth a lot of change.
Yeah. And I agree,
So
it's worth spending more time on. I just don't know that we can spend that amount of time this year. I'm not crazy about it going into residential C without really having any, interest in it in the two, and maybe tweaking what we have in residential A and residential B. I don't think the town would go for this, but I wouldn't say, I don't want to decide for the town. I can't say
We could
that
take
I
another
would
year,
be
though.
prepared to be supportive of it.
We could take another year or two to look deeper. So we don't rush something through. This is the second time we've talked about it.
Yeah. I think it's a big change. You're going from what's now 50% of the town to almost 80% or into 85 space wise.
Personally, I mean, I would actually really just like to see the open space committee. We haven't presented it to them yet, and I do kind of just really want to know what they think of this whole thing. So I guess, yeah, that's my kind of, I mean, yeah, if we delay it, I don't know if I wouldn't want to just keep delaying it, because again, I do think there are negative consequences to our current zoning, that we are having subdivisions coming in that I do not think are the best designs that they could be if they were using this one, or the
Well,
A&R law. I mean, it's like the way that we're building housing is, I don't think ideal, and I'm not sure just keep pushing this and delaying making positive changes to our zoning is necessarily the right move. But I also don't, would we maybe imagine if there's a special town meeting in the fall, if we'd want to have this, by then, rather than waiting until next year.
I would say I'm ready to move forward and decide whether we want to move forward on this.
Okay, is everybody ready for that? My computer keeps hanging. I don't know why. So I don't know why you guys keep freezing randomly. So if I freeze, I should come back quickly.
Also, I guess I'm still not really clear what specifically the opposition is to it, and I guess I'd like to, maybe give us until the next meeting if people can formulate, because I like, are there minor changes to this that people would be find acceptable and ready to go forward with, or is it some of the specifics that you think we need more time with?
I mean, I think a lot of the opposition has been stated that basically, I don't feel that this is going to impact much if we already have one in RA and RB. I don't see how this is going to have a big impact. There's only 23 lots that are privately owned at this time. It's 23 lots. No, it's a small percentage of it's 25% maybe of that residential C that this could be applied to, other than town or state owned. I think we have this bylaw in place already. Maybe tweak that one rather than tweak all of, add the whole new bylaw to residential C and include A and B in it. You're going from 50%, less than 50%, or almost 50% of the land to close to 80%. It's a big change. You're adding duplexes, triplexes.
Well, then if we're not adding
we can
duplexes
go
or
on,
triplexes,
but,
I mean,
if it's not being heard as opposition or concern, then that's, we can review that the discussion maybe, but I feel that I'm hearing a lot of concern.
but I guess I'm trying to, I'm still having a hard time really understanding, is it, I mean, because from what you're saying, you're concerned that this is not going to do anything. Other people are concerned that this is going to totally change everything.
I don't believe this is going to have the desired impact that should have intention here. And the intention is to maintain open space and cluster some of the development into smaller areas so that we can have open space. And I say we have that bylaw in place in residential A and residential B. It's never been used. It's never been applied. So we're missing something there. What are we missing? I would like to see how we can promote this element. I don't think this will have the intended impact.
I think what Lori said she heard is the developer wanted to do duplexes. But what we heard for years is the residents don't want duplexes. So are we, are we representing the developers or the residents or I just
I think there's a way to promote this and come together on this. I just don't think we know what that way looks like at this point.
Yeah, I think the other thing, Carter, is that, from what I'm hearing, I think there's a misconception here that this is going to allow the building of more units per acre than what could originally be done, right? And maybe that's where, we need to approach this to show that, this isn't going to increase the number of homes that could be built or the number of units that could be built in Northborough, right? And if we can write it to that aspect and say it's not going to increase the actual number, what it's going to do is just condense them so that you can have open space, right? Condense that number. That's what you're going to have to convince people of, right? Because they don't want more, but if it's an equal, okay, well, if it's equal, but now in one we get additional open space, maybe that's something easier to swallow, if you will.
And to that, I will point out that under the current OSRD bylaw, there is a density bonus that allows for additional housing units on it. Under the proposed changes, we are getting rid of that.
And that might be the problem, right? So, is allowing those additional units to be built. That's all I'm saying.
And you would think that would appeal to a developer. You would think that they'd say, hey, I can get more units. It still hasn't appealed. What is it? And is it because it's in special permit? That seems like a silly thing to dissuade somebody from their economic and financial benefit, if there is one. Is it time? Does it take more time to do this type of design? I don't know. I would love to see it. Honestly, I really would. I think it's great. What are we missing? And
maybe in the next year we could take some of the big slope parcels and see how they would really, because that's what it would take to convince me. I mean, this was called cluster housing. Like, I think they used it in the past to get more density, and now they've renamed it open space residential because it's more palatable. But I don't know. I heard from people in the olden days they would use it so they can use the wetlands as part of their parcels and then develop more that they normally wouldn't be able to develop. And I'm not sure if that's being used now. I don't think it is. I think you have to take out the wetlands, but I'd like to see it. And I don't think the residents would be open to the duplex, triplex, quadplex. Because I know we got a lot of pushback on that before. And I don't really want to bring that up again. So it is 9:30. As a board, do we want to take a vote on whether we should just postpone this and decide to talk about it next year? And we could take a vote to see who wants to try to get it on, this year. Or those who would like to just take a little more time and talk about it or pass it over altogether.
So if I could, I'd like to ask Carter. Carter, do you think 2 weeks you would come up with something different? Or do you know what, this is your proposal, right?
Yeah.
I want to sort of hear from you what your
Mhm.
thoughts are at this point. Do you want to push it off a year? Do you want to push it off a couple of weeks?
I think I would say if you guys are thinking you want to, I would ask to at least allow the next meeting to give me kind of another opportunity to see what I can kind of offer, that to see if to take a look through, rewatch some of the meetings, look over
Yeah.
notes and stuff, to kind of try to wrap my head around the opposition, maybe kind of talk to some other people around town, see what they think, and see if I have anything different to show you, or if I have at least a better path forward of what maybe we will be doing after town meeting to move this along.
I think that'd be great. I mean, I think that would be worthwhile to kind of listen to what some of the comments were. I'd like to as well, because I absorbed some of it, but I think there's a lot of positives in this. I just don't know that we're going to get there with how this is being approached right now.
I know for me, because I know you guys know what I already said, but I think the big parcels, like Anthony had said, because that's what I see other towns doing and using this for. And that's what this town used for Bigelow's. I think that if there were some farms you wanted to save or other things you wanted to save, that's the purpose of the open space residential, not every little parcel in town. But okay, so I guess what we've decided is Carter's gonna go back and think, and everybody's gonna go back and think. I'm gonna move forward to the next agenda item, which is A&R's lot releases and bonds, and I didn't see any on the agenda.
No, there are none. Just as an update on the agreement for the West Street, the Ignatius Common Drive. I did reach out to town council for a sample agreement that we could model after. And he did send me something which I received today. So it wasn't in enough time for tonight's meeting, but I will put that on the agenda for the next meeting. So there would be your approval on the format of the agreement. And then, of course, you folks would have to sign it, as well as the developer.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, I see Brad's hand is still up. Brad, did you have something you wanted to add before we move forward? I'm not sure if it's still up from last time from.
Must be tired.
Okay, well, if he wants to, he'll come back on. All right, so next on the agenda were minutes from December 2nd, 2025. Carter and I both had amendments. I don't know if people had time to read them. I'm fine with Carter's changes. I think they were merged with mine.
They were.
Does anyone have any additional changes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of December 2nd, 2025 as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, Millie Milton,
Aye.
Bill Pierce,
Hi.
Anthony Zaitin,
I,
Carter, Brandon,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay, the same with December 16th. It looks like Carter's and I's were merged. I had no comments further. Were you all set, Carter, too?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have any additional comments?
No.
Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the December 16th, 2025 minutes as amended?
So moved.
Okay, Millie Milton,
Aye.
Bill Pierce,
Aye.
Carter Brandon,
Aye.
Anthony Zaitin,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. So the minutes have been approved. Any subcommittee updates?
Nope.
Nope, I don't either. We meet next week. Next planning board meeting is January 20th. Do we have any applications, Lori?
We do have something that's going forward at our next meeting. What is it?
Is it the same one coming to design review next week?
No. I'm sorry. Hitting the wall. I can't remember. I'll email you tomorrow.
That's okay. That's okay. No problem. So our next meeting is January 20th. And then February 3rd, we're gonna have to do a public hearing for our town meeting. Do you think since we're still talking next week, I mean, the middle of February is not too late, I would think, for the public hearing, just to be safe? Or we can do it the
Yeah, I
first
mean,
week.
especially if we don't have anything controversial. If the decision is not to include the OSRD, then we should definitely be ready and maybe be able to wrap up that public hearing in one meeting.
Okay. So maybe the second meeting in February. All right. It looks like you're meeting next week with the ZBA and then master plan on February 19th. Is there anything else anyone wanted to add tonight? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, Bill Pierce,
Aye.
Millie Milton,
Aye.
Carter Brennan,
Aye.
Anthony Zaitin,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. All right, good night.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Good night, everyone.
everybody.
Bye.